Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to another live stream. Today is Monday, October 4th. Starting a little bit later. Stayed up last night, frankly, watching Wall-E more than anything. Yeah, just was never seen that kids movie and figured I'd check it out, which probably indicates that I'm getting at least a little bit distracted from playing Shadow Hand, which we're making progress with, but there was a chapter near the middle where I just don't think you could win without getting really, really lucky, because it requires you earn a specific amount of gold in playing it on hard and playing it on normal. I was still at least 50 gold short, and it's not like there's a lot of opportunities to get extra gold. You can only get gold in Shadowhand by getting higher combos, which is luck based more than anything, or by using a specific active ability to turn cards into loot, which requires pretty strenuous gameplay too. The good news is, having failed the chapter technically on the second time on normal, it just let me move forward, so whatever. It seems like Shadowhand really has two possible metrics: one where you have to beat all the chapter goals, and one where you have to get all the stars, and it is questionable which one of those, although they mostly seem like they overlap and are the same thing, it is questionable which one of those is actually the system that qualifies as beating the game, because there are achievements on both hard and normal and easy for beating the game, and I'm playing it on very hard, which Shadowhand definitely feels like a game that you should probably play on normal to start with and then play on very hard. But I don't know if you get any more experience or any more items by beating the game on very hard after you've already beaten it once on normal. It doesn't really feel like you get more experience if you go the other way around and beat a chapter on very hard, then go back and play it on easy or normal. So yeah, over the weekend, it's been mostly what we've done. We've gotten a lot of these daily private matches. Seems like that is just now in the rotation as far as random daily quests. Clearly, I did not play anything over the weekend as far as Shadowhands. Didn't even think about it, which is a problem, certainly, because we do have the at a certain point, I probably should look at how many of these Dawn of Calamity cards I'm missing, and think about potentially just sitting on some cards for the mid expansion that adds more cards. Because if I have like 2 or 3 copies of everything that is a normal card, or even the couple of steps above normal, and I'm just missing like the platinum cards, then that might be better suited to just save those packs for later. But yeah, there is also the solo event that I've forgotten about in 2 different places, and honestly, it is an extension of just coming to terms with not caring about Shadowverse. Let's see if we go and we limit this to the Calamity expansion, and we go into create mode, we have what actually missing, and missing would be about the only thing that's important. We have this card here that's missing. We have this card and this card, which are missing. this card and this card, which are missing, and this card and this card, which that mostly says that I should just stop opening packs. There are definitely cards that I only have a temporary version of, or cards that I have only one copy of, and that's when you start getting into needing to just open more packs and more packs and more packs. But I guess there's really nothing else to say around that. Yeah, we might start only opening 2 packs or 1 pack per day. And so yeah, multiplayer wise, we have this, which then would reward us with a sleeve, so we want to do that. And we have this, which would reward us with multiple rewards, so we really should do this one. So I suppose what we'll do is try and have a fairly easy day today. Let's see, can I in solo player get any of these daily quests done? No. So the stream I did where I had already done all the daily quests should have been the day really that I would have Shadowcraft, Heavencraft, Runecraft. Like that really should have been the day that I focused in on specifically doing the single player solo stuff, and it didn't even occur to me that that would have been the smart move. I got a lot of views on Friday. I was actually surprised by that. Well, relatively speaking, 12 views. Last time I looked. Come on. We may get a lot of views today because it seems to me that YouTube's Facebook is down, so maybe we'll have a major spike in viewership on YouTube. Is there anything else to talk about? No, I mean, it was kind of a slow weekend for me. Had a major plumbing issue that took a lot of time, and just a lot of distractions over the weekend too. So it's kind of lucky that I was even able to make the several episodes of Shadowhand. Still not getting anywhere as far as actually scheduling videos, which yeah, I'm just terrible at that. Like, I just hate it so much.
I'm not lonely. Not with everyone around me.
So yeah, I guess we'll, for today, try and clear the news. There's obviously not going to be a lot. Well, I don't know if it's obvious, but there's not a lot to say because not a lot happened. Over the weekend, not a lot of games came out. We have like a game here called Clan of Death, which just looks a little unpolished, a little low polygon. It's $3.79. It's online PvP only. That's gonna be its major limiting factor, is just trying to find other people to play it. And yeah, I'm not sure I'm particularly awake enough to even mention that. Let's see. I I don't know if I'm even awake enough to make a rant, particularly around how there's that art style, which we can also see in Coronation here, is just been ridiculously played out as far as the low polygon stuff. It would be fairly easy to put some speed bumps in, just say, hey, write a paragraph justification as to your art style and your visuals, because we've seen thousands upon thousands of low polygon games. Honestly, if you just added the question why to the submission form, which I assume is not there, then that would help, I think, eliminate a lot of these low effort games on Steam. And anybody that's complaining about, oh, it's too it's too difficult to submit a game to Steam, would obviously be one of the people that's flooding Steam with garbage with garbage games. EU came on the chat just to say hi and bye because it's late. He lives in a significantly different time zone, so yeah. It is fairly late for me to start, but that is the problem with having just a crazy sleep schedule always.
My heart is a garden bird.
Let's see. Discard a card. Draw a card. So we could discard something that just draws a card anyways. Do I have any reason to evolve anything?
No, thank you. You're mean.
So yeah, if you said, what day do you want to release your game, and then why, that would be kind of a tough question, so you probably wouldn't want to do that. But what do you want to price your game at, and then how did you determine this price, and then just a blank box, leaving blank boxes in particular instead of check boxes. That way you could really make them think instead of just clicking the first checkbox, unless you're going to put some tricks in it. You see definitely in like the counter content ID claims in YouTube that they put in checkboxes that where you specifically, the first 4 or 5 options you choose are actually just wrong choices, dead ends that they're going to just use to come back to you automatically and say, nope, you're wrong. So maybe you could do checkboxes as far as why did you price this game this way, just to kind of gauge the flippantness or the amount of care people have put in, or thought they put into listing a game on Steam. Same thing as what kind of gameplay does this game contain, and then why is this online PvP? Why does this have online co-op? What languages does it support for its interface, and why did you pick these languages? Does it have full voice acting dialogue, which really is what this should be. It should be full dialogue, not full audio, because full audio means nothing at all. It can easily be misinterpreted to the advantage of a scammer, and you could say why these languages had full audio, and then which ones have subtitles, which I've never really seen a significant number of games that actually had subtitles in them. So, like, if anything, these are bad tags to use. It would also be very nice to see, hey, why don't you list the voice actors, at least in, like, Japanese visual novels and Japanese RPGs. You would probably have some significant overlap and start to see more recognizable names if you did list the voice actors in your game. Darn it. Same thing. Which genres do you want it in? Why? Why are you putting this out on early access? The description, you really can't ask why on the description, though. Mature content rating, a why certainly could ask there. Minimum recommendations, a why could be asked there. Like, why did you determine, or how did you determine this? But yeah, just asking a game developer or a game publisher to justify its decisions a little bit, I think would help deter a few of the low effort game developers. Now, in all fairness though, if you ask why and it's a text box and you're a low effort game developer, you're just going to develop a system of copying and pasting the same response. But then I guess you could easily detect that. And even a legitimate publisher might start that policy of copying and pasting a response. So it would only be a slight speed bump to the smaller people flooding Steam, whereas it is very questionable whether it's not medium-sized and large organizations that are actually flooding Steam with garbage games. And nothing is going to replace true curation of just having somebody who could be like me, certainly somebody knowledgeable enough with how video games are supposed to look and knowledgeable enough to know what a low effort asset flip game looks like. Of course, the problem with any curation is you have to have a long-standing vision as far as the health of your shop and the health of buying games on PC in general. It may very well be a case that Steam is the mighty boulder now, but decades upon decades, if an entire generation grows up seeing or hearing about all the low effort garbage games, which maybe they don't ever see or hear about the low effort games, maybe that's just me, because I'm looking at all their games. But if a generation hears that narrative, they will eventually just subconsciously lose interest. So, like, in the long run, you have to look in the long run, whereas capitalism is only focused on what profits can you make quarterly, and you can always make more profits quarterly by simply having more things available for sale. In most Walmart-like stores, tend to bring the as seen on TV type products that are usually not as good as they seem. That they tend to bring them in, sell them for a very brief amount of time, and then take them out again. Whereas Steam keeps them around. Yep. Steam's review system alone really could help curate a lot of games. It's same system as I use. If you just tell every publisher and developer, hey, we're gonna bury or remove your game if it hasn't gotten 30 reviews, positive or negative, that would probably solve a lot of the issues. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and just evolve here because I think we can win.
You could use some shine yourself.
Regardless, coronation looks like nothing. Here we have search for objects in the forest, which I think we had already talked about. So I went back probably a little too far and opened some older games. Here we have Toho Monster Tower Defense, which honestly I seriously doubt I'm going to end up playing just like every single Toho game, but this is labeled very positive, and it doesn't look like just a generic tower defense game. It looks a little bit more polished than that. What I would want to see is that this would be a relatively short experience with a beginning, middle, and end. So you weren't just constantly playing a Toho game.
I'll get it right this time. The real battle begins. Let him go!
Okay. Here we have carving over it with Evanji Padi Nilkiv, which I guess is a spin on getting over it with B'nai Fadi.
Hopeless.
Honestly, even getting over it probably isn't an irrelevant game. This is English-Russian language for $4.99, and it's obviously going to be a no. Like, even getting over it, though, was overhyped by people like streamers, I think, more than even Giant Bomb. Like, I want to be careful not to just say, oh, it's always been Giant Bomb that's overhyped everything, or mainstream video game journalists in general that have overhyped everything for me. I would say getting over it in particular is more of a streamer slash PewDiePie invention, and I'm not sure that there really was a lot of relevancy ever, or a reason for that to have been as popular or talked about as much as it was. And it's very hard to do like a retrospective and say, hey, at the same time people were obsessing and talking about getting over it, these 5 games came out and you didn't hear anything about them because of it, or maybe because of it. It's hard to prove. Here we have something called Iris Convent, Song of the Forgotten Heroes, which just has large cleavage, more darker metal fantasy art. That it definitely is designed to look like some of those later Square Enix, Scarlet Grace, I think might be one of those types of Square Enix spin-off Final Fantasy games, as Final Fantasy mainline stories started to become more and more about black leather belts and modern outfits. What I really can see here, though, is that these are obviously pre-bought assets, and that they are hinting at a 18+ patch. $8.99 English and Japanese. It says it does consider nudity. And then when you actually look at the gameplay mechanics here, it seems to be incredibly poorly animated compared to the focus on the screenshots and the dialogue stuff. And as an actual RPG, you can see it's a particularly basic RPG element here. You're not seeing a lot of items or equipment, a lot of skills, a lot of stats. So yeah, it's definitely trying to sell on the nudity more than the quality as a game.
Yeah, I love this job. Yes, I do.
And personally, I just have a hard time believing that there actually is a generation of kids that ever existed on Steam that, I don't know, had their internet connection so well family filtered that they couldn't find just porn on the internet, where the internet is just overflowing with porn, and instead the only way they're able to see even one static image of cleavage or nudity would be through buying low effort games on Steam, which these games also, for the most part, tend to be filtered on Steam and blocked by default. At least some of them are. I'm not sure if I could go as far as to say they are all properly labeled and filtered. Well, we can't do anything there, so we'll end the turn. Yeah. And then, let's see, next one is tag sexual content nudity. So I guess the timer is reset at this point. We have Rebel Pure Love Fighters, which looks like your standard RPG Maker game that has dungeon crawling, more visuals as far as your actual encounters, which arguably this might be the better way to depict any kind of RPG encounter if you're going to really focus on what the enemies look like, or what the heroes look like when they're doing their special attacks sometimes. It saves you a little bit of effort of drawing these smaller zoomed out characters in combat in a medium size. This is a small size, obviously. But yeah, you can pretty much tell that there's nothing here for that game. It is 454. It supports English, Japanese, and Chinese. And then there is a free 18% DLC on it. No, 18 plus DLC. Yeah. And it's, I suppose, somewhat surprising that they can even consistently just say 18 plus, because I'm sure there's some countries out there where 18 plus is not high enough. Seriously, just play. That was not my fault completely. Then we have Breakbound's Exile, which looks like a visual novel with actual effort on the animation. If anything, it looks like maybe there's too much action being depicted. It seems to me what they've done here is they've got 3D renderings of backgrounds with 2D characters in the foreground, which I've seen that fail before, but I'm always slightly interested in trying to see people pull it off. And yeah, you have to be fairly careful, because if you put too thick of a black outline of the 2D characters around the 3D environments, it stands out too much. And it does stand out here, but I could see people subconsciously not noticing it. There is also a fairly obvious blur going on in the background to make it so it's not focused on as much. Whereas if it was really, really sharp imagery in the background, I think you would recognize it a lot more. Yeah, when they inverted it and blurred the foreground and showed the background, that definitely looked different. Yeah, this looks very violent and bloody. But this was probably also the opening cutscene that they're showing. Wow, there might be QuickTime events in this. $6.99 English and Chinese. Interesting looking. I'm gonna put that on the follow list. Yep. maybe I should be playing unranked. Like, I think it is, as far as Shadowverse, getting down to the point where we need to just give up on ranked completely. Just play unranked, get the daily quests that way,
Bow before dark
drop out of
ruler of the
even trying
skies.
to win at ranked. I don't think there is anything that specifically requires ranked as far as daily quest. But yeah, we are definitely in a weird position with the games on Steam right now that a whole bunch of adult games are getting approved all of a sudden. Seems to be that they have been getting approved in the same pattern as all of the other games, instead of being held till a weekend so they don't get any press and then released and dumped on a late evening Friday timeline. Have we finally seen what felt like a rogue employee being caught for doing that and treating adult games differently, putting a personal bias ahead of just fairness and the company interest? But I mean, a paranoid mind certainly could make a complaint either way, because now it seems like games that may have been actually getting curated are now being allowed on Steam, and so now it feels like a whole bunch of garbage games are coming out and just making the adult games look even worse. And we constantly have the problem of there just are never any high quality adult games, or very rarely are there high quality adult games, and that's probably more to do with the fact that people are just not making high quality adult games, more than there being some available and not available on Steam in particular. Yeah, as I think about it, I don't think I have seen any high quality adult games come out and not make it to Steam, so, or if there are any, they are tied specifically to specific adult game websites like Nutaku, which half of their games that they release or most of their games that they release are garbage. Right, well, I think you do this, and then this.
To make a wish come true.
Did this, and then hit this. Yes, in the turn. So the next game we have on Steam is called Oh Dungeon Master, which is a pixely dungeon crawler with the occasional adult image with the heads cut off on most of them, which is an odd choice to get to a square resolution. 74 cents, and it's just like, yeah, this is the kind of game that probably should be curated off of Steam, because of the fact that it is not really integrating adult content. It's just putting flat images that it very possibly just stole off the internet into what is mostly just an asset flip dungeon crawler. And on top of that, it's not, if you just ignore the adult content, it's not a good game. It's something that we've seen dozens of times before and not appreciated dozens of times before. And it doesn't deserve nor need a extra look or a second look. Let's see, next we have Booktopia 3, which makes me assume that there's two previous ones. Looks like it's a top-down twin-stick shooter. but let's see if we can actually see some gameplay. Yeah, it seems like you're barely even shooting anything. Usually you're not this zoomed in a top-down twin-stick shooter. Usually the enemies aren't taking needing that many bullets. Seems like you don't have unlimited bullets, which is crazy for a twin-stick shooter. It's $11.99, bunch of languages, that's too expensive. Let's see. One came out August 11th, 2020. 2 came out July 5th, 2021. And 3 came out now, October 1st. And none of them seem to have any reviews on them. So they seem to be completely irrelevant.
March on! I like. Give me that.
Let's just keep on playing. Here we have a game called Starfighter, which just looks like space. 74 cents, English only. Yeah, nothing there of interest. Here we have a game called Love Flute, which sounds provocative as a title. Looks to me though like it's probably a Chinese visual novel, maybe with some simulation minigame elements too. It's rated very positive, $7.99. Korean, interesting. Alright, well, English is not supported, so unfortunately that leaves me with nothing more I can really say about this game. I think we are somewhere between 5 and 10 years away from starting to see Korean games specifically start to really break out as their own separate environment and industry. Let's see. Keep this one.
This is my last job.
And then
Die.
you hit this one. And then you evolve this one.
One step closer to victory.
And you
Harder armor. Steel
hit
yourself.
that one.
Loyalty is ironclad.
And then that will clear the field.
I bestow upon you my lightning.
Here we have a game called Chess, which
My armor has been pierced.
all the screenshots are the same, or the page is not working. Interesting. The whole page is just not working. Well, all the screenshots are the same anyways. Free. English only. I suppose the price is right, but this really does not even look like chess. It looks like it's some... they're calling it chess. Chess is a turn-based combat game is what the description is, which makes no sense.
Thunder roars like a beast from the void.
Okay.
You're weak. You're weak.
I bestow upon you my lightning.
Here we have a game called Requisite, or Requisite, probably is how that's pronounced. I've heard of a word called Requisite. Yeah. Doesn't look like a full game here. Like, it's too brown, even if there was a full game here. Just like way too brown in its color palette. Free to play, early access, English and Chinese. Here we have a game called Mystery Swords, which looks like kind of nothing. $6.59, English only. Okay. Let's see. If I played this now,
This town eats good folk for breakfast.
and then play this,
We'll return light to the canals.
At your service.
and then just end the turn. Here we have a game called Funny Puzzles, which is clearly just a puzzle game of no interest, $7.14. Close that. Here we have Flasco Man, which looks like it's probably a puzzle platformer, but I'm not quite seeing what the game is. And this is another game that feels like it's just a little too brown.
For everything.
Yeah, I'm trying to watch this trailer and see if there's actual gameplay here that feels like something worth playing. I just don't think there is. It's English and Russian, $4.99. It says it's steampunk. Steampunk should not mean that everything looks brown. That is, in my opinion, the absolute wrong way to describe, or wrong thing to take away from. See.
Resolution in my right hand, might in my left.
Okay.
Two blades in one go.
Oh man, I don't think I'm gonna win here. And what's funny is I thought I was gonna win. This really feels unfair at this point. We could try and win though. If we played this and this, and then this, we might be able to do enough damage.
What'll drop first? My bolts or your tears?
For news, we have Video Game Chronicles saying Sony has introduced free game trials for PlayStation 5. Players can play 5 hours plus of Death Stranding and Sackboy for free this month. Which 5 hour plus of Death Stranding is probably not enough to finish Death Stranding even if you're running through it, nor is it really quite enough, I think, to enjoy Sackboy. But it definitely would tell you if you were enjoying Sackboy. Alright, well, I guess we'll just go in circles. I still haven't really tried to build up any deck. Like, what needs to be happening right now and isn't happening is instead of giving us the new content as far as solo expansions and getting chests for playing ranked and getting wins while playing ranked, there needs to be a tournament happening right now, which does happen fairly frequently, with the new cards, so you could try out the new cards using the free entry to the tournament, and then whoever wins that new tournament should then very quickly be able to share through their lacking system that they do have, the decks that win. So low effort players like me can copy and paste them and have at least a clue as to which cards should be playing. If I play this now, does that just banish that card? Yes, it does. I thought maybe it wouldn't. Video Game Chronicles says Final Fantasy 16 has only a few quality of life improvements. Quality improvements left, says producer. Which, yeah, that should be probably few quality improvements, not quality of life, is what it says. Yeah. That should be bigger news, like, because there's kind of been nothing said at all about Final Fantasy 16, and this video doesn't want to play. See if we can reload this page and see if it wants to play now. Nope, totally doesn't. Yeah, you would think Final Fantasy 16 would have had a little bit more hype around it, but they're too busy re-releasing remakes of Final Fantasy 7, I suppose, or adding more content to try and make Final Fantasy 15 something that's actually viable as a game. Because if I recall correctly, Final Fantasy 15 barely had any story in it, and there was like a whole element of story that you have to watch in a spin-off OAV anime to get the story that happens in the middle. Like, that is a problem, certainly, that nobody ever really talked about the story of Final Fantasy 15, because it should be a major factor. Yeah, in my mind, at least. Okay.
What'll drop first? My boss or your many pardons?
That was delightful.
Let's see. In Japan, the Mega Drive Mini is getting a Master System adapter, but it doesn't play any games. That is because I don't think the Mega Drive Mini itself really had any connections to the top of it. That this adapter, which is different than the Master System adapter that was for the Sega Genesis, is just toys, and so are these cartridges. They are just toys for display purposes. And in all fairness, even though this part actually, the bottom part actually does play games, they are just preloaded ROMs. I feel like they had already announced some of this, but maybe they hadn't. And then I'm sure the Sega My Card is also not something that's really going to do anything. Yeah. Having a card input as like a memory card is kind of groundbreaking instead of using a disk input, but actually I would say the Famicom disk drive was just a little too ahead of its own time when it really should have succeeded more than it did.
I'll see you in purgatory.
My raging flames have got your back. That twig won't do a thing.
There we go. I think part of the problem with Sega's idea of accessories and expansions, and it's what the Famicom also thought it was going to be is that once I got to the Western world in Japan and out of Japan, that just felt like it was a toy selling you the option to buy more toys in an era where that just doesn't make sense. Physical DLC in a lot of ways, the adapters and things, whereas the Western world has pushed more of the general idea that you're one and done. You buy the Xbox 360, and the next Xbox hardware you're going to buy is the Xbox One. Unless, of course, you get the Kinect or something that is lesser of importance. I think if you ran the numbers, there is a high chance that most accessories, most add-ons that have failed for console games, at least in the West, the memory expansion unit for the Nintendo 64 was kind of a failure. Even the Rumble Pack, which I would say was mostly very popular, kind of a failure in that it just wasn't in 100% of every game, so it wasn't supported out of the box. Tons of Wii U accessories that attached to the Wii Wiimotes were failures because it's just so expensive to make physical things and ship things. The original THQ went out of business because they tried to sell a physical adaptation. A physical artboard, like drawing tablet, for I think the Wii or Wii U.
Worship the primal flame.
That twig won't do a thing.
Do we want to evolve this and attack here? Could, but we probably shouldn't. Yeah. Even like the Super Scope, I would say the Zapper was a success because it came with later versions of the NES, but even in that, not every game supported the Zapper as an idea. I would say that the Kinect was a failure. I would say, for the most part, if you just think of it globally, PlayStation VR has been a failure. Like Rob the Robot, not really a major success either for the Nintendo. And when you get to like first generation games, there were definitely some first generation video game consoles that were black and white and came with physical like overlays that you would tape to the front of your screen to make the games look more visual, because all they could really depict was black and white dots. And so with that level of poor quality even in the first generation, I think some of that also was in the back of the mind of a lot of parents. And if anything, one of the great selling points of video games would have been that, oh, this is all digital, it takes up less space, I don't have to have a room crawling with Lincoln Logs and Legos to trip over. Instead, they can just play the dumb Nintendo. Yeah. And so you're kind of undercutting the idea of, hey, this keeps everything nice and organized. It's impossible for a kid to spill all their digital DLC on the floor and never pick it up, or like they can physical toys. And you very rarely see success even in the opposite direction, when you have physical toys trying to go in the digital route. We have seen the case of like Lego and their new, what is it? It's called something like Vimeo or something. It's a musical themed tie-in app where you can take pictures of these Lego pieces and they will play different musics as far as the different Lego posters are concerned.
The sacrifice must be paid.
But yeah, even that has semi-failed, and they're going to relaunch it. And then the Nintendo tie-in Lego Mario sets have also failed because in my book they've kind of failed because it just didn't look fun. And I think most people will eventually have gotten bored of those. I don't even know if this is news, but Jeff Bezos, the former person in charge of Amazon, who very possibly may be the person back in charge of Amazon within the year, has praised the launch of New World. After many failures, we have a success. But I mean, I think it's kind of ridiculous to listen to Jeff Bezos just because he was the Amazon founder when he really isn't working with Amazon anymore, last I heard. So in a lot of ways that's like listening to Bill Gates just because he has a lot of shares, maybe even a controlling interest in Microsoft, when Bill Gates really isn't doing too much with Microsoft, at least as far as we can tell. Maybe he's from this behind the scenes puppeteering a lot of things. But yeah, even at that, him saying we have a success is really just him hyping up something he has a vested interest in. So it's a very biased opinion. He would have said that almost certainly no matter what. And I'm not sure that people really care about New World, which seems like it came out of nowhere. And I'm not sure people are really playing it.
And so our pact is forged.
Melt under my touch.
Let's see. Ghost of Tsushima and Monster Hunter share Japanese Game of the Year award. The Japan Game Awards judges also honored Mario Kart Live Home Circuit, which I think is the real world RVs. Let's see, and this is an award ceremony that's more Japanese centric, so there was zero announcement or coverage of it or talk about it. And this, I assume, is centered around Tokyo Game Show. So we'll look at it here in a second. Do this.
Allow me to bestow a crimson kiss.
And then do this.
So our pact is forged.
And then can't evolve. So they gave the Grand Award to Ghost of Tsushima Monster Hunter Rise. Award an Excellent to Uma Musume Project, Genshin Impact, Ghost of Tsushima, Sakuna of Rise of Ruin, Resident Evil 3 Capcom, which I kind of want to know which Resident Evil 3 they're talking about. Is that the remaster for PlayStation or PC, or do they not really split it? I guess they don't really split it, that is an interesting way to potentially award a game, is to say, hey, even if you were really good on one and really bad on other platforms, we're still just going to consider you as one unit. And I guess particularly in the Japanese market, if you were really good on PlayStation and then you had a terrible PC port or a terrible or like a terrible Microsoft port, people probably wouldn't care as long as the PlayStation version was good.
You have summoned the blade of purgation here.
Why did I not kill the one with poison? That was dumb. A game called Buddy Mission Bond, I've never heard of. Final Fantasy VII Remake, Momotaro Dentetsu, Monster Hunter Rise, and Last of Us Part 2. Best sales went to Momotaro Dentetsu. I feel like Momotaro Dentetsu is either the travel game or the train riding game. Minister of Economy, Trade, and Industry Award goes to Ko Shibusawa, which I suppose is just a way to award one person who actually works in the video game industry in Japan, where it is fairly traditional to never name or award anybody in Japan or praise anybody, only abuse employees, even high-level employees or mid-level employees. The global award went to Animal Crossing's New Horizon for it being a Japanese product, and see, that's really where their mindset comes from, and I think it's probably a more accurate description too, is to say, hey, there are things made for the Japanese market or by the Japanese industry, like Animal Crossing New Horizons, which was made by Nintendo. Actually, I think they had a subcontractor work on it, I'm sure. And then there were foreign products, which is just the rest of the world. And they're giving that to Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War. And then Gamer Design Award went for the Live Home Circuit, which is the RV cars. Yep, and I would like to try and ensure that we get these awards as they were listed there every year, so we can talk about it more often. But I bet there's a high chance next year I will overlook any announcements that happen. And yeah, I guess the only thing I could try and do is find like the Tokyo Game Show's Twitter feed and make sure I'm following them on Twitter. Which, if Twitter did disappear or go down permanently, I would have considerably less avenues for news, but could probably still figure something out. It'd be a lot of extra work. The company, the developer of the game, The Ascent, says it's aware of demand for a PlayStation 5 version. Developer tells users to keep an eye on its social channels for PlayStation news. Which, is this really news from Video Games Chronicle? Probably not. Like that is like one of the ways you can certainly respond to something and not really say anything at all. That's a great way to also get people to sign up to your social media channels and then never actually announce a PlayStation 5 version. Which, yeah. You would have to be a fairly small company to not be able to port a game over to the PlayStation 5 at this point. It made a lot more sense in the PlayStation 3 era, when you would have to really compile and make a different game. But now, you'd have to just have such a small amount of budget, or just a general hate for PlayStation to not be able to port, or not be willing to port a game to the PlayStation. Unless it's PlayStation that's causing trouble, and they have certainly shown that as a problem too, where Sony is not approving your game or making extra demands of your time. And I guess that is the contrast. As much as I say I would like to see curation yeah, on Steam, at least Steam is a almost 100% stress-free experience for somebody to potentially port a console game to Steam. You don't have a fear that you're going to get rejected after spending a lot of time, unless of course you're making Super Seducer 2, but then if you're making a game that potentially has an underage live action character, that does risk your game not being listed pretty much anywhere. I never saw a final story there. I think it was just generally they didn't want to do business with the Super Seducer producer, which is fair enough. But if there was actual like child pornography or underage scantily clad characters, which I think would fall under that category of child pornography, if that was really there was never any charges pressed, and it's not like you would need the actress or lady to testify. You could easily subpoena that. It would be an easy prosecution and win if it were true. So I have to heavily assume that it wasn't true, and it was more of a case that I think Valve said they could not independently verify the age of one of the actresses, and that's why they didn't want to do business without actually making any larger accusation. And frankly, I just, again, don't think they wanted to do business with him. It would have been more honest, frankly, if they said, we've just decided we don't want to do business with this person. Which, frankly, Valve would be more honest if they just did say that. Video Game Chronicle says the Metroid Prime producer reveals an axed open world game plans. Retro Studios wanted to have Samus explore a non-linear environment in her ship. Which, yeah, that's where I think Metroid Prime, the next Metroid game, should go. It definitely would make a lot of sense to go in that direction because the Metroid Prime series was somewhat linear, certainly, but it definitely felt like more of an open world. And in all fairness, almost all open worlds are still fairly linear. You have to be pretty much an expert at a game to be able to jump from one place to another where you're not supposed to be. Ocarina of Time, most people would call that an open world game, but in reality, you would need specific items to get to specific places, which severely would limit your options and make it much more linear. And my suggestion of sending Samus Aran to a different universe to get away from the Chozo and show a universe that is mostly already been devoured and destroyed by the Metroids would make a lot more sense, and let you introduce a lot of new enemies, because Metroid Dread really feels like it is playing itself as around the idea that you're going to be obsessed with the robot enemies and nothing else, whereas Metroid Prime had a lot of little creatures that all felt new, even if they were just remakes of older 2D sprites. They all felt like new characters and new creatures. What this tells me more than anything is the fact that Retro Studios is announcing this now means the relationship by this former senior director has come to complete finality. that he at no point expects he will ever work with Nintendo again, and he's probably not super happy with Nintendo, which I think most people that partner with Nintendo are probably a little pissed off at Nintendo for the totalitarian way they run their business, and some of the stupid decisions they make.
Terminating hostile life form.
Delightful. Verifying access.
So yeah. Brian Walker also does not seem like a Japanese name, so that makes me think like he does not have that Japanese loyalty till the end mentality, which would have stopped him from saying this out loud, even if this was something that happened even if this had happened a long time ago. Here you see, yeah, here's Brian Walker here, so, and he doesn't work with the company. And at a certain point, this is very much confusing the issue because it's talking about an open world game that would have been in development, I think, a long time ago. And it's not to be confused with Dread. It's not to be confused with the current state of whatever the next Prime game would be.
Enemy identified.
Let's see.
That was delightful.
The Epic Games Store is launching a new achievement system next week, according to Video Games Chronicles. Sorry, I went quiet there. Players can earn XP by earning epic achievements in supported titles. The XP points, I assume, are not going to be used to unlock anything. Let's see. It will include Rocket League, Hades, Pillars of Eternity, Kena Bridge of Spirits, Zombie Army 4, and Alan Wake Remastered. All of those games already had achievements, so it was just Epic taking its sweet time. It's going, I think, 4 tiers of each achievement. So, at maximum, it seems like you could get somewhere around 1,000 XP total. Yeah, this feels like it is just direct copy of the best of PlayStation trophies and Xbox gamer score, and yeah, it seems like these XP points will do nothing. And I guess there was an achievement system before this, so the previous achievement system must have just not given you points. That doesn't really feel like much has changed. Alright, I'll do this.
100% string and
Do this.
0%
Everything was a lie.
And evolve this, I guess.
Okie-dokie, rinky-dinky, darling dolls.
Video Game Chronicle says FIFA 22 has sold 35% fewer copies in the UK than the launch of FIFA 21. Subtitle here, but that doesn't necessarily mean the game hasn't sold well. And 35%, you could make an argument that 30% of that is pandemic related and just economy related because of the pandemic, more than it has to do with the fact that the word really got around about how bad FIFA 2022 is. Although it does seem like the world has gotten around.
The unknown lies beyond the clouds.
Oh, my beloved Nava.
Well, do we want to do anything else? And then Video Game Chronicles says the 512 gigabyte Xbox Series XS storage expansion cards are reportedly set to be announced. Retail promo material for the cheaper alternative to the 1 terabyte cards have been spotted. We've pretty much confirmed this. They haven't come out and confirmed it, but yeah, it's pretty expected.
You have summoned the blade of purgation here.
I like, regardless of how necessary it might be, I really do not appreciate the idea of going down this route of recontextualizing the value of a 512 SD card by saying, well, this 512 SD card is rated to be at a higher speed and more of a gaming class of SD cards. I feel like there is a potential chance here where that will just lead to more low-level 512 memory units, even if they're not SD cards, coming out, like, and instead of there being more improvement. Like, the push clearly should be that everybody should demand all of the micro SD cards, all of the any kind of flash memory you get should be as fast as what's going into the and as high quality as what's going into the Xbox. Instead, I think that you might have unintended consequences where people are putting all their effort into making the Seagate ones that go into the Xbox, and then the other ones that are available for sale get less looked at. But that's probably not really a concern, because we already are at a point where micro SD cards in general tend to wildly vary in their speeds, the number of the writes. There's a whole bunch of counterfeits, a whole bunch of terrible quality ones, and sadly you kind of have to shop by brand name, or shop by brand name and model name and speed tests to be certain if you really care about the quality of them. And generally I actually don't. I get SanDiscs when they're on sale and assume the SanDisk is going to be good enough. The micro SD cards are rated, but most people wouldn't even know the rating system because it's been like 2 different rating systems. But yeah, they have a little like U next to them, so a U with a 1, 2, 3 in it for ultra high speed, and before that they would have had what else would they have had on them? Let's see, I'm looking at some on my table here. I have U1s, I have U3s. I don't know if I have any of the older ones that didn't even have a U on them. And I guess you're not getting into any of that mess when you are just selling only 2 units of storage. The bigger complaint certainly should come from the fact that there just was not enough storage or a adjustment for storage in the Xbox Series X and S anyways. Which for most people there probably is enough storage, but games are just getting bigger and bigger. And we're gonna have to in the next generation put our foot down and say, hey, this is going to be a 2K system, not a 4K system. And because of that, we had to do that, and we're gonna have to stick with 2K and not 4K because we can't adjust for the hard drive space. And we've seen that kind of with like digital movies too, is that when you are physically like mailing hard drives to movie theaters, which is what they were doing for a brief time there, or physically shipping hard drives, not mailing them to movie theaters instead of downloading, because downloading was just too slow. You've hit a maximum limit there. Moving on, we have a game on Steam here called Infinite Sky, which looks like nothing. 1999 English only. A lot of these games I could have easily dismissed. Here we have Archer's Adventure, which seems like it's probably a physics game where you're shooting arrows. 1999 English only, way too expensive. And I've got to dismiss some of these games just for their taking the piss attitude, to use a British phrase. Like when you make a single screen game, even if it looks alright, but it's just like a single screen game that should be like a tech demo, really, or a mobile phone game, and then you want $20 for it, you're just not being realistic. And that is the why question, I think, more than any, that should be asked by Valve and Steam before you are allowed to list your game, is justify your price. What Steam could easily do is say, hey, if here is a selection of games that have sold well at this price point. Here's the top 10 games that have sold at this price point. Does your game look like this? They could even, and this would be a little bit more complicated, they could even do like a visual match between the top 10 games in a certain price point and the screenshots. And you can get an algorithmic percentage of similarity when you do something like that. So if the top 2 games for like Doomsday Defense at $19.99, if they all looked like this low polygon Minecraft clone, Roblox clone game, then these screenshots should come out with like a 85% similarity, 95% similarity, something probably a little lower than that. But if this game came back and was at a 0% similarity to the top 10 1999 games, they should say, hey, this game needs to be flagged, because that just does not line up well, or this is not a realistic price. And that's really what the case is Doomsday Defense is A, not a game I'd ever play, but B, not a game that is realistically priced at $19.99. Yeah, and if anything, I feel like I'm more peeved at games being marked $19.99 than I am games being marked $79.99, because you very rarely see a low effort asset flip game at $79.99. Which maybe does imply that Valve is looking at some games that are just ridiculously overpriced, but they allow games to be significantly overpriced. Alright. Do we want to evolve here? 12 in this.
Let the darkness embrace them.
Here we have a game on Steam called Forbidden Place, which just looks like a asset flip first person shooter. 1999, English only, again. Here we have something called Gorge. Which, There's an inconsistency in the visuals, but the actual game doesn't look like anything. Yeah, it kind of feels like it would be The Witness, or it would be like The Witness where you're solving puzzles, but all of a sudden you're doing wall running, which doesn't make sense for puzzles, and your puzzles seem to be mostly limited around wall running. This actually is very nice, the water, but then this red cave system looks pretty bad. No, the whole thing seems like it's all over the place as far as the environments. It seems like it's all over the place. It's free. English, Spain, Spanish, Portuguese, Brazil, and Chinese. So I guess check it out if you're interested, but yeah, it definitely feels like it's just incredibly inconsistent.
I'll get it right this time.
Your shining faith will carry you.
You're done for. Let him go! Why is
This
this
guy
so
does
hard?
not want to die. I'm about to lose because I didn't play fast enough. I could have just attacked. Here we have a game called Turing Complete, which Turing Complete means that it's a real computer. This kind of does look like some kind of circuitry, logical puzzle game. There's a question, I suppose, as if this is fun, but I'm willing to put it on the follow list and give it a chance. This looks like a very realistic depiction of actually making circuitry, whereas most programming games completely ignore the circuitry, and most circuitry games completely ignore reality and just present something that is completely disconnected. Now, arguably, the programming elements here in assembly, which I don't know if this really is assembly, it doesn't kind of look like it to me, and doing circuitry design, those tend not to be done by the same type of people. You have more specialists to do the circuitry design and more specialists to do the programming. This is $13.99 English only. I'll put a follow on it. And more we're getting to the point where circuitry is in part, if not in whole, being made by artificial intelligence. As far as the actual placement of circuits, once you tell it what kind of circuits you want. And the actual physical design on a circuit board on a bit of silicon
To arms! There's a battle
tends
underway.
to be so complicated that you could never actually address it as a human without major assistance. Let's see. Next we have a game called City of Thugs, which clearly looks like it's just an attempt at looking like a GTA game, which it's been a very long time since we've just seen low effort GTA clones. Free to play, English only, single player. So I don't even know why they're making a clone if they're not making any money off of it. Once Upon a Time in the Colony looks like a low polygon survival game. Early access, Chinese only, $3.99. So obviously that's a no. Here we have Typer Hero, which looks like a Chinese typing game. 99 cents English and Chinese. Here we have Dungeonscape, which looks like a garbage dungeon crawler with no enemies in it. $2.99 English only. Let's see. It's a Autism Fantasism Gaming. So are they claiming that the developer slash publisher of this has autism? They're not mentioning it, but that is a weird publisher name to make up. If the person doesn't have autism, although we have gone fairly wild as far as people claiming to have autism, because at this point I think you are fair just to assume that nearly half of everybody on the planet has autism under the new definition, and anybody who wants to claim it can't ever be challenged. And at a certain point, it definitely feels like it's an excuse. There is a big difference from saying, all right, this person has developmental problems and needs help while they're in school, versus somebody who is a fairly successful indie game developer who's long since left the point where they were in school. Like in the real world, in the working world, I don't think autism or claiming you have autism can or should really help you much. Like, I don't think you can help people with autism that way. If I went and worked a job and said I had autism, and then that all of a sudden gave me more of a timeline, longer deadlines or less workload, that would feel really unfair to all the people who hadn't claimed that. The cigarette addiction has always been that same situation where the only way in a lot of jobs in the past to get a break was to get a smoke break, 15-minute smoke break every couple hours, whereas the people who weren't smoking weren't getting that that break in some jobs, and thus it was more advantageous to start smoking and risk your lung and your life and getting cancer than it was to be healthy and then be required to carry the workload of the smoking people. Of course, also, the workload for most employees is insanely high and ridiculous. Yeah, I can't get any more information, I guess. But yeah, I would think that this is probably a bad publisher name not to use, something that Valve and Steam should consider not allowing, since we know it's a made-up publisher name. You know, Valve could probably address that issue very easily just by requiring everybody to show a form of incorporation, the legal forms you have to do to actually form a corporation. And if you haven't actually done those that forms of incorporation, then you shouldn't be able to list yourself as a publisher or even as a company. Whereas I'm fairly certain that at the current time you can just claim to be almost anybody while listing something on Steam, and there's no check. The only thing they'd probably check is if you claim to be Nintendo or Square Enix or something like that. Something that is already in their database or on their sightline. We have Fist, Forge, and Shadow Torch, which is rated very positively as a Metroidvania game. which it definitely did not get advertised in every time it was shown as being a Metroidvania game. It definitely looked like it was more of a 3D open world action game. And see, I guess the irony here is that this is a game that is by a basically no-name developer and publisher for most people. You wouldn't recognize these names, I don't. And it may be the better Metroidvania game that comes out in the next few months. It's $26.99, English and Chinese full audio. It meets the requirements. I have to put this on the wish list. Like, the only other thing they've published is the demo as a developer. And the only other thing the publisher has pushed is the demo. Like, that would be the ultimate irony, is that Metroid comes out and just sucks, and you're then left with just this
Delightful.
just that one.
That was delightful.
I paid so much for that axe.
Yeah. What am I trying to say here? It would really suck that if this game doesn't get its due because Nintendo came in and sucked all the oxygen around Metroidvanias. But it wouldn't just be Fist that would suffer there. Castlevania re-releases are happening, and they probably are going to not get as much coverage as Nintendo continues to talk about Dread, which I wouldn't be surprised if Nintendo is just kind of counter-programming and talking about Dread, and then all of a sudden Dread gets delayed and doesn't actually come out. We're not getting any victories here. Let's be realistic here. This is wasting our time playing ranked, trying to get the victories. Let's just try to get the daily quest. Runecraft, Dragoncraft. Well, you know what? This one's 50, but it requires 4 victories. Let's see. So Runecraft, Dragoncraft. So what we'll focus on: unranked, rotation, Dragoncraft. Yeah. I don't know if Castlevania re-releases really matter that much and deserve coverage, but they probably deserve a little bit more. I think most games that get re-released don't get enough coverage to them. And I think that's a little unfair. Let's see. Gamatsu says a 2D action game, Timothy and the Tower of Mu, launches 2022 for PC. Which, I've heard of Mu. I don't know what it stands for, though. Or what it means, if it means anything. This almost has like a Wario feel to it in its art here, but it definitely looks more like a Game Boy game in actual gameplay. It does feel like you're just going up tower after tower. Let's see. Not a lot of heroines called Timothy. Or heroes named Timothy, is what I meant to say there. It's too long of a name, I suppose, and not particularly that popular. Yeah, it seems like a lot of these platforming sections barely have any enemies in them. This art style is really anatomically inaccurate, just giant bobbleheads, and even at that, the broad shoulders, it is getting smaller as you go down lower. It definitely feels like it's trying to be something like a Castlevania game with several characters, but doesn't really feel like a Castlevania game in that there's actually a lot of challenge. So yeah, color me unimpressed as far as this game. I just don't think that there's gonna be any quality there.
If I turned tail and ran, there wouldn't be a dragon.
Let's see. Gamatsu says the dramatic comedy adventure What Lies in the Multiverse launches early 2022 for the PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC. Which, okay. What does that look like? Alright, starts off kind of zoomed out RPG visual novel. And then you end up getting teleported into a multiverse. And then all of a sudden you're doing just like pixely platforming for the most part. I feel like, yeah, it's gonna be swapping. Yeah, you're gonna jump and then swap and then swap back and forth. And that there basically is going to be a good universe and a positive universe. And there might be something there, but there's also a high chance that that there really is nothing to it, and it's going to be very generic as a game. We'll keep an eye out for it. Then we have Nobunaga's Ambition Rebirth, delayed to 2022 in Japan. The debut trailer, details, and screenshots. Nobunaga's Ambition being more of a military board game strategy experience. I would have thought it was closer to a Warriors game. Yeah. This is the kind of game that would have to be completely reskinned, or you'd have to just put a lot of explanation in it to explain the cultural references and relevance there. And more than likely it would just never actually come out in the West. Let's do this.
My heart is a guarded foe. You're on.
Let's see. Relayer Tokyo Game Show 2021 online official gameplay video is available. This is one of these mech or side-scrolling shooter games that tries to have interesting looking characters, but then we're starting to see this trend of Japanese games having kind of interesting varied hair colors and skin colors and eye colors for the people, and so you pay attention to the eyes and the face, and you can tell the difference between people. But then they want to have a unique like conformity of some sort in the uniforms, which kind of just drastically clashes. It seems like fashion may be dying. Is this the Japanese response to all the SJWs complaining about anime games that show too much skin and too much cleavage? Now every character is going to potentially be clothed in a heavy jacket and hidden from view. It is possible that is exactly what is feeding this idea, because this fashion seems bad, like different color coding, like. And I suppose we should talk about the Japanese often in funny ways bowing to censorship, in the sense that the Resident Evil 4 Oculus version of the game, the VR game that just came out, yet another re-release of Resident Evil 4, has retranslated and changed anything in Resident Evil 4 that they would have thought would have been taken as being a sexist comment. So the flirting with Hunnigan and the main character seems to have been changed. There was a scene in RE4 where like one of the a female villager had been killed, and I think the line of dialogue when you clicked on it is the main character going, I guess there's no sex discrimination here, which technically that would be a good thing, and yet they've rephrased that. And yeah, what can I say other than mainstream video game quote-unquote journalists have terrified the Japanese and tricked the Japanese into listening to them, which is this was, I guess, always the danger, is not that people in America were going to be stupid enough to think that video game journalists were in line with what video game players were concerned with. The concern is that you could convince other countries that don't understand the cultural clash or cultural war that, for lack of a better term, that's going on, and would just assume everything being said by video game journalists is true, or that the Japanese would see that there are like 100 posts on a Reset Era forum, and that would feel like a lot of posts to a Japanese audience, but when you realize that there's probably 1,000-fold more gamers outside of Japan than inside, if not way more, having 100 people on Reset Era posting nonsense doesn't really matter. And it is more of an issue, I think, of the upper tier management not understanding the situation more than the actual game developers themselves.
My dreams soar higher than ever.
Yeah, as for this game Relayer, to get back to that instead of going on a rant, this does look weird as a game because it feels like it's a mech game, but really it's a board game. It's a position placement RPG game. Yeah, and it's not my type of game, so I'm not really interested in that.
That twig won't do a thing.
Let's go ahead and try and clear the field a little bit more. Earth Defense Force 6 has its third trailer. I don't think we need to watch it. Earth Defense Force probably isn't going to be that good. I hope it is good, but I'm not expecting a lot from it. Blue Reflection Second Light has its second trailer. This is a lot of girls for Blue Reflection. I thought the Blue Reflection series was like 4 or 5 girls in this kind of post-apocalyptic world. Yeah. I guess maybe it's slightly more. This group of girls. Yeah. That's more than I thought there were. Living in kind of this post-apocalyptic world of some sort. And some of the girls, I think, do have vague romance paths with some of the other girls. Yeah, that's more characters than I thought it had. I guess the question, though, is if we're up to Blue Reflection Second Light, which is coming out for the PS4, Switch, and PC, there must have been a Blue Reflection 1 that came and went, and particularly for more niche games like Blue Reflection, that now would be the time to, if you had extra time, decides to check out the older games, well, they probably are going to be cheaper.
But I feel so alive.
Okay. Finally, we get a victory.
Victory is exhilarating.
Hopefully we can just get 2 more quick disconnects and then focus maybe on the solo stuff or something else. Gematsu Atelier Sophie 2, The Alchemist of the Mysterious Dream, has been announced for the PS4, Switch, and PC. So, yeah. They are moving, frankly, a little too fast for my taste.
Artifacts obey me.
I'm still, in my own mind, stuck on Atelier Ryza. And seems like they probably might even make a third Atelier Ryza game. I think one of the things about the Atelier series, though, is that it is supposed to be more of a coming-of-age story of specific characters, and so they roll the dice every time there's a new spin-off series with a new character, and even if they have fairly high success with a character that is liked, they can only really make so many games before they've grown up and aged out. In a lot of ways, I guess this is the idea of we're introducing a new Zelda in something that is like a Zelda game over and over again, instead of just having the same Zelda and the same Link, which I guess in fairness, the Zeldas and Links in most games are the Zeldas and Links in Zelda and Link games are actually different people, so there is some truth to that. It just kind of doesn't really feel like it plays that way.
But I feel so alive.
Let's see. There we go.
Victory is exhilarating.
Just a quick disconnect. Which good. If I can get one more quick disconnect here, then I could either play ranked on Havencraft only, not bother with Shadowcraft, or I can do something else. Yeah, here we can see some costumes that they're putting out. So you have Atelier Sophia 1, Atelier Fierce outfit, Atelier Lydia and Sueli, and then Atelier Ryza outfit. Which honestly, at a certain point, this is the idea of that the outfits are the selling point solely, and not the person themselves, which is a little weird. The Atelier Ryza outfit, I think in particular, was very popular because they specifically were willing to have a character wear shorts instead of skirts and dresses, which is way more typical, and I think the thighs were a bit thicker in this character than normal, and they were willing to highlight that, whereas I think they may have very well thought that the Japanese audience were bigger fans of smaller thighs. And I bet there's all kinds of different variety of interest and likes amongst the Japanese fans, but that are being underserved. Let's see. Here we have a game on Steam called Escape from Planet Aela. Aela, maybe? Regardless of how you pronounce it, it looks like garbage. It's free. English, allegedly full audio. I don't think I'd spend any more time on it, though. Just looks like a dark asset flip. Here we have Lumberjack Simulator, which is mixed reviewed. I kind of like seeing these specialized tools to do lumberjacking and logging, but I really only like seeing them potentially once in a lifetime just to see how that machine works, and I wouldn't really want to play a simulator around it. This is $17.99, English and German, full audio for both, and mixed reviewed tells me it is probably not worth it, worth your time. Lumberjacking is like one of the most dangerous jobs in the world, and a really hard job from the looks of it, so I imagine a simulation of a really hard, really dangerous job isn't likely to be that fun.
Worship the primal flame. If I turned tail and ran, I wouldn't be a dragon.
Let's see, here we have a game called Angels and Demons. I don't know if the thumbnail cutting off half of the face of a character is a smart move. I think it would make a lot more sense to just have this here and have that here and show the whole face. It looks like it's just a tower defense game at first glance. Yeah. It seems like you're just kind of dragging the angels to try to take over the towers and reinforce the towers to stop the devils from taking over the towers. Definitely feels like it's too simplistic of a game and a concept, and frankly just too mouse clicky. $7.09, English, Russian. Yep. Yeah, I don't really have a better way to say it other than it feels like you just would have to click a lot of mouse clicks and drags to play it, and it'd probably wear out your fingers fairly quickly. Here we have Polybius Invaders, which looks like a weird perspective of a Space Invaders game.
Get used to this rain.
I feel like the visuals here are just slightly off, otherwise I might actually consider something like this.
Delta cannon, fire.
You're a fiery one.
Yeah. I just don't
Back for round 2.
think there's enough of a game here. I feel like you're just dragging the mouse all over the place and just pressing the mouse click. Maybe you could use a controller here and that would change things a little bit, but if anything, all this has done is taken the problems of a regular Space Invaders game and made it 3D. It doesn't really address the fact that Space Invaders is kind of a boring procedural game. $8.99. Does it have controller support? English, allegedly, full audio. I'm not seeing any controller support though. Yeah, I don't think there's something there.
Worship the primal flame.
My raging flames have got your twig won't do a thing.
Let's see. Here we have a game on Steam called Nor Part 2 Will Walker, which,
It won't be long now.
yeah, I don't think there's enough of a game here.
You're a fiery one.
The top-down twin-stick shooter elements, the kind of asset flippy looking graphics, the bad looking graphics, if not asset flippy. This is $4.49, English and Russian. What is this? Nor 1. When did that come out? 2019. Seems like nobody ever reviewed it. Yep, no user reviews, so it's just completely irrelevant as a game. Here we have Les Adventures de Fierrot, which definitely looks like a low effort French game. Free, French only. We may start to see more low effort French games, or just French games in general, going forward. I wouldn't be surprised if that's exactly what happens. Just because I suspect we're going to see several countries start to get more into releasing games on Steam, and trying for a worldwide audience, or releasing it on Steam even if you are only marketing it to French audience.
Through.
Wow, it is so much better to just not play ranked. You're so much closer to actually succeeding then. You really should just swear off playing ranked completely. Right, and see, now we theoretically are just looking for Havencraft victories. Here we have a game on Steam called Zombie Hunter, which, yeah, you'd have to do something kind of amazing to make something called Zombie Hunter interesting. This looks like a sniper game that is slightly interesting, but it feels just too much like a mobile game too. We have seen worse versions of this idea for certain, but yeah. It's free to play. Within app purchases, English allegedly full audio with support of several other languages. Yeah, you just would have to have a above average level of visuals for this to really interest me. I think sniper games in general need an above average amount of visuals to counteract the fact that you're zooming in. NIS, or Nippon Ichi Software, has announced a dungeon survival strategy RPG called Shikabane Garurai no Bokemenshi for PS4 and Switch. Why did I stall on the PS4 and Switch when I was able to barrel over mispronouncing the two big Japanese words? Okay. I bet this is not much of a trailer for what will probably be not much of a dungeon crawler. Seems like a lot of it is around the idea of cooking food, so you may be dungeon crawling for ingredients. You have some varied looking characters in that chibi art style. Seems like you can customize your characters. Although this is barely the chibi art style, frankly, it's getting somewhere in the mushy middle between a chibi art style and a moe art style. I'd say it's got big heads and is probably slightly closer to the chibi art style, but yeah. So the actual gameplay might not be turn-based, and it might be a little bit more action-based, although it might also be more of a placement-based RPG, which would overcomplicate things. I did play a cooking game, maybe 6 months ago, and it turned out to be fairly boring. It was half action, half cooking game. Battle Chef Brigade, I believe was the name of it, yeah. And I feel like this game may very well try heavily to lean on the cooking mechanic that it's maybe stealing from Breath of the Wild while not really offering much else new as far as the actual action that you would put through it, or you'd have to play. Let's see, River City Saga 3 Kingdoms has an opening movie. This is apparently a game for the PS4, Switch, and PC, according to Gamatsu. Which I hadn't even heard an announcement for this game. This is probably not going to have a lot of effort put into it to make it come to the West, if it even does come to the West. But yeah, because it's just going to be a little too historical focused. I heard some rattling. I think my gate might be loose. I'm gonna mute myself for a second and I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that.
My heart is a guarded pearl.
Man, we still have so many games. Like, one of the things that struck me as kind of interesting today is that it felt like there wasn't a lot of news, and I guess that's kind of true fairly often on a Monday, is that there's not a lot of news that happens, but there is actually quite a bit of games left over because we didn't really finish all the games on Wednesday. We did finish all the games on Friday. And I'm maybe leaving too much over the weekend and should try to go for shorter Mondays. I think that's probably a mistake. Usually Mondays get a lot more views than a Friday does. So, yeah. I probably am doing it right. It's just that now that we are past the big announcement season, as far as mainstream video games, it feels like I might be wrong.
Come on, smile.
Alright, where were we? River City Girls 2 has its debut trailer, which, yeah, that game I did know had been announced, and they're going for more of a manga trailer here. And you can now play as, I think, 4 of the River City Girls instead of just the original 2. Although it seems like it's mostly focusing on the 2 girls in the first game, which that might be a good idea too. Oh, yeah, you can also play as the boyfriends. Maybe you can't. Maybe that was it. Maybe there aren't 2 more girls being added. It kind of feels like it should be the idea of more than two when you use the phrase girls. I bet the creators felt a little bit better to bring in the boyfriends as playable characters. That way it doesn't devolve into a series where the River City girls are just either beating up girls only, which feels a little awkward, I'm sure, to Japanese people, or beating up boys, and then it becomes a little awkward as, oh, look at these strong, empowered gangster girls. No, there are girls. Yeah, let's see if I can pause it there. Nope, that just moves way too fast. Yeah, that's about as best as I can do. So yeah, you start with these two characters in the first game, and they're saving the boyfriends. We've saved the boyfriends, and so they brought them in as playable characters, and still you're keeping it mostly girl-related by bringing in two more characters. Now, arguably, can they continue down that path, or is this going to be the totality of the female characters who have been in the River City Ransom series or the River City series in totality? I mean, even at that point, I guess I could just introduce new characters. No problem there. As long as River City Girls helps succeed and grow this River City brand, which is a long-running brand, but has not been particularly well curated and dealt with.
Smiles are the best medicine.
Let's see.
Your shining faith will carry you.
Let's see. Do we have any evolve here worth playing?
You are done for.
The earth shall quake with effort.
Let's see. 101 Industries and Soleil have announced a third-person action game called Wanted Dead for PS5, Xbox Series, and PC. Do we have a teaser of it? No, just these screenshots.
I envy you.
Yep. Kind of looks like a point-and-click adventure game to me, but maybe not. Maybe you actually are going to have some first-person shooting around it. It almost feels like a Quantic Dream style game, not made by Quantic Dream or made by a Japanese company. Yeah, there's more action here than what it looked like in the screenshots. I was expecting there to be very little action. And then I have no idea what Vinny's Late Night Chow is supposed to be. I assume it's a parody cooking show. But I don't know how that really connects to Wanted Dead at all. Yep. Yeah, that's the kind of teaser that doesn't even deserve to exist, because all it really is just trying to get name recognition around something weird. It is the Geico commercial strategy, basically, of just do something weird so people remember the name, because Wanted Dead is a pretty forgettable name. Speaking of forgettable names, we have Mission 1985 here. Not to be confused with something I'm sure called Mission 1984 or 1986. I'm sure there's something out there like that. Yeah, looks like it's kind of an old school shoot 'em up game, maybe with some different angles, but that's about it. $8.49 English, allegedly full audio. That is way too expensive for what you're offering, and frankly this kind of game is just way too old-fashioned to be sold and put out as a modern game, and frankly it does just look like a clone of better
Is fighting and despair
games of
all
that
you
same
know?
style.
Time for me to prove myself.
Here we have a game called Closed Hands, which looks like it's way too text-based for my interest. $11.69 English, allegedly full audio. Here we have Flyland Wars Zero Ball Game Trainer, which looks like garbage. Free to play, English only. We can say no to that. Here we have Flyland Wars 2, Not Yours Mine, which is $3.99 English, allegedly full audio. No to that. And then Flyland Wars 1 Mountain Clue. See, if you're putting out 3 different games at the same time, that should trigger an alarm. That should stop that from happening. $3.99 English, allegedly full audio again. Flyland Wars 3. Alright, we're done with this guy. Let's see. Click on this guy. Hide items. Can we block this publisher? No, we can't. They have to have the new publisher page to block them, which is kind of stupid. But yeah, I have no interest in somebody trying to flood the Steam marketplace with garbage, and that's all they're doing. Here we have Spaceship Visual Effect Graph demo, which says it's from Unity Technologies. It's free, English only. I don't see an idea though where Unity should be putting out anything on Steam. If it really is Unity, which I kind of question if it really is. Then you have this game, The Explorer, that came out in 2020. I feel like somebody has just taken Unity's name and created a company called Unity Technologies. I feel like it would just be Unity if it was actually Unity. Let's see. Take one from this.
Time for perennial prayer has come.
Here we have a game on Steam called Wings of World War II, which looks like garbage. $4.19 English only. Here we have Pneumo Capsule Domiki, which sounds to me like a Russian game. And it seems like you're controlling this kind of pneumatic tube thing that's being shot around using electricity. In some kind of weird alternate universe with pneumatic tubes on rails. It's tagged as steampunk, and frankly it does look a little steampunk. $24.99 though. Whole bunch of languages. That is asking way too much. I just don't think there really is a game here. Yeah, I don't think there's a real game worth that much. Maybe if that was a $5 game or less, I'd give it consideration. Here we have a game called The Judgment of Q. Don't ever press Q, it says. And I assume this has nothing to do with the Q from Star Trek The Next Generation. $9.99 English in Arabic. Yeah, I don't think there's really a game here. Yeah, this feels like a asset flip joke game. Here we have automation of sorts, which looks like just another automation game. Apparently it's multiplayer focused. $9.99 English, allegedly full audio. I guess you're sorting mail or trying to sort mail. That doesn't sound particularly fun.
I'm gonna rest for a bit.
Let's see. Gamatsu says 101 Industry has announced a sci-fi racing game called Red Goes Faster for PS5, Xbox Series, Switch, and PC. Seems to be, if this page wants to load, seems to me like this trailer may not really have
Let's play.
much to show or say. Red Goes Faster is kind of a funny name for a racing game, in the thought that if you paint a car red, it goes faster, or feels like it goes faster. Same company, 101 Industries, has announced a mech combat game called Vengeance is Mine for PS5, Xbox Series, and PC, which I've never heard of 101 Industries, so I'm not sure if this isn't a Chinese publisher or a Japanese publisher that has either changed their name recently or just started making games. Because, yeah, it is kind of out of the blue. Neither one of those games, though, look particularly interesting at the moment. They don't have a lot to show. So, this is one of those prime examples of somebody just announcing things way too early. Destroy a random enemy. Let's see. Dragon Quest X Offline launches February 26, 2022 in Japan for the PS5, PS4, Switch, and PC. The version 2 expansion is due out in spring of 2022. I guess the offline probably indicates that Dragon Quest X had major online elements originally, and now they're selling it as a more portable or more offline element.
Let's play. Hey, let's play.
It seems almost silly, though, to try and sell a relatively recent game in an offline version versus just patching and updating the original version of the game so you can play it in offline mode. And that is a trend. If that's really what they're doing, that's a trend I don't want to see happen. That would be very, very annoying. Here we have a game on Steam called Roar of Revenge, which, yeah, looks like an NES era game. Nothing of interest there. $3.99 for English, French, Italian.
You're done for.
Here we have Gobby McGobblenuts presents the questionably quirky quiz show, which, yeah, this looks like a joke game. $1.19 English, allegedly full audio. Yeah, it's a single screen, like, question and answer experience. Here we have a game called Arthurian Legends. We may end a little bit early today. At this rate, I say, but we may. I've very rarely has that happened. And if anything, we should do some follow list cleanup instead if we're ahead. Let's see. Yeah, Arthurian Legend, though, looks like nothing. Just, I don't know what you could really do to make this fantasy style look good to me, but clearly this doesn't do it. $11.99 English only. Here we have Queen of Zarkov, which just looks like an acid flip. First person low polygon shooter, $5.39 English only, also very dark. Video Game Chronicle has an article. The ex-PlayStation boss says he doesn't think Sony will ever do day one PC releases, which again, just like listening to Jeff Bezos, listening to the ex-PlayStation boss is probably not worth your time.
May the forest be a
Gamatsu says Square Enix has trademarked Valkyrie Elysium in Japan, and Gung Ho Entertainment has trademarked Deathverse. So there's some hints to new games. GameDeveloper.com is looking for submissions for the GTC 2022 summits, Game Career Seminar, and Masterclass, which, of course, once again, owned by the same parent company.
rest for a bit.
Okay, do we want to heal now? Or do we want to wait? Let's see. GameDeveloper.com says using established card game rules for monster slaying and RPG combat in PokerQuest. I normally wouldn't talk about these kind of hype blog articles, but
Let's play.
playing Shadowhand right now, PokerQuest might be a more interesting twist on something like Shadowhand, which is solitaire. But honestly, this doesn't really feel like you're doing a lot towards a poker hand. I guess you're playing cards that affect what cards are in your poker hand, and you're doing one card maybe face up and 4 cards face down against your opponent. Yeah, I'd have to really look into this to make sure you're actually playing poker. I guess you might be and you might not. It might be a very different type of poker than what you're expecting at the very least.
My thunderbolts shall guide you, if they don't kill you first.
Okay.
It looks like I'm up. Oh, come on!
Okay. We don't want to really heal at this point, so we'll just end the turn. GameDeveloper.com says Calypso Media has formed 9 World Studios to work on Tropico 7. Which, okay. That's just like a new studio. Let's see. Says it will be operating at full capacity by early next year. Paradox has scrapped an unannounced project to show, or several multiple unannounced projects to sharpen the production pipeline, which that's probably not that crazy. It is perhaps slightly crazy to come out and say that, and it almost feels like you would say that publicly just to boost your own shares and stocks and make it look like you're doing the right thing. But I imagine nearly every game publisher or game developer out there has scrapped many unannounced projects without looking for a pat on their back, which is kind of what they're asking for. Here we have a game on Steam called Farmer's Market. Let's burn through these Steam games first before we cover the last bits of news. $5.94 English only. That's obviously a no. Here we have Rebirth Beware of Mr. Wang, which is tagged with sexual content, so let me make sure that's YouTube family friendly.
Smiles are the best medicine.
Okay. Go ahead and put this on the field now. Actually, I think we had even talked about this game before and just how much it was surprisingly mixed reviewed already. Very highly reviewed for a game that is $7.64. English, Japanese, full audio, Chinese. So I don't know if it was getting review bombed or what.
Where'd everyone go?
It has no plot, as in no nudity. Yes, I have the DLC.
I lost.
View type negative. I guess that would be why so many people would hate it, is can't load save, game just crashed, terrible. Yeah. Seems to... Man, you really have a hard time sorting through reviews. They've made this just like impossible, haven't they? Either there are only 3 English reviews, which maybe that is the yeah, maybe there are only 3. That doesn't make sense though. Let's go back. Mixed reviews in my language gets you only 7 new reviews. Okay, so it is just a massive amount of Japanese people hating this game. Or, I mean, we could confirm that actually by the language. That one, language. Yeah. At best, I guess I can say is that a massive amount of Asian people who are writing the reviews in Asian language hate this game. And that is just a shockingly high amount of people who would be even willing to review the game. But it does cost money. So there seems to be a rage there. Here we have a game called Lost and Found, What If I Come and Find It? Which looks like it's just a asset flip game. Says it's a hidden object game in a 3D environment. You're trying to find things and then throw them down
Is fighting
the...
and despair all you know?
I guess you're looking for a fight.
throw them down the chute. See, in a lot of ways, this is just an asset flip physics game. I feel like the cleaning game was more interesting on that general concept, and although the cleaning game doesn't have you actually looking for specific items as part of its goal, it gives you a lot more to do or not do at your own opinion, your own choice. I forget the name. Viscera Cleanup Crew, I believe is the name of it that I'm thinking of. Here we have a game called Ripple, which just looks like a simplistic puzzle, single screen puzzle game. I don't really think that there's something here that would interest me. Yeah, you just click on the squares and they go in the direction that they're pointing. Yeah. And they ripple on the screen. Here we have a game called Kyle is Famous, which looks like a text game, probably a joke game. $14.99, English, allegedly full audio. I seriously doubt that. We have Halloween Stories Horror Movie Collector's Edition from Big Fish Games, which is just a hidden object game. $8.99. This is a weird hand gesture he's doing as far as, I guess he's signing. But yeah, still not sold on the idea of ever doing another one of those. Another hidden object game. Here we have a game called Warp Frontier, which looks like it's a point and click game. And there's a sucker for point and click games. I'll put this one on the follow list. It is $13.49 English full audio. Here we have a game called Momentum, which is way too neon. It's free, English only. For free. I guess that's not much you can really complain about. It does seem to be only really single player split screen, which is another problem with a racing game, but that is also way too much neon. Free or not, way too much neon is still way too much neon. Here we have Golf for Fun in Ice, which looks like it's just a crazy golf clone, and frankly having ice as an extra mechanic does not sound particularly appealing. $1.29 English only. Here we have a game called Horror Maze, which is a very generic title, and it definitely looks like it is just an asset flip horror game. $6.99 English, allegedly full audio. I assume you're pretty much just running in what is a maze environment and being like chased in different kinds of maze environments, whether it's actually a walled maze or a corn maze or something else. There's almost an attempt here that makes it look like that they were started trying to make a good game and they just ended up with a inferior product, which I guess that's slightly better than starting from the perspective of just trying to be a rip-off game, which it seems fairly obvious that a lot of game developers are just, from day one, trying to make a low-effort game and didn't put any thought or effort into it. Here we have Centipede Recharged, which is marked mixed. Yeah. I'm going to put this on the follow list just because there's some relevancy here, because it's the new Atari trying to publish this, not the actual Atari. Actually, the actual Atari, I think, has gone out of business 3 or 4 times. $9.99, bunch of languages. If anything, this Atari is a great example of why when a company goes bankrupt, they should be forced to release all of their intellectual property into the public domain. It serves society way better to say, hey, your business is out of business and this should just be public domain stuff so that anybody can make a Centipede game, versus the concept of bankruptcy as it is now, which is you run into massive debts, therefore we're going to sell off your intellectual property to the lowest bidder, who's going to do the slimiest thing possible without real exception. It will be the lowest bidder who does the slimiest thing possible, so he can then try and milk society off of product that lowest bidder had no hand in creating at all. It comes from the idea, certainly, if when you get down to it, is it more important that people who lent money to Atari, the original Atari, to run their business, banks basically, debtors, and who knew the risk, do they deserve to get money or try and profit more on the back end of all of the rest of society? It's a different thing to say, hey, a debtor gave a business a loan and they bought $10,000 worth of office equipment, and thus we're going to auction off the office equipment because we have nothing better we can do with that auction equipment. You can't put office equipment in the public domain and say anybody can have this office equipment. You could potentially say this is going to the local libraries, who could probably use a lot of office equipment, or the local school systems. You could do something like that, and that too would probably benefit society a lot more than really alleviating the risk that banks who gave out these loans knew that they were taking. And banks would potentially try to make the argument, well, if you didn't let us sell the intellectual property or sell off the office equipment to recover our loans, then we would just have to charge even more to the individuals who have bank accounts. But that argument kind of falls apart because banks have been screwing people on bank accounts for decades. And I'm getting into an economics rant, but yeah. Actual ideas, I think, should lose. If a corporation is going to be considered a person, bankruptcy is the death of that person. You have to take it from that perspective. And I don't buy into the idea that copyright should protect the creation 70 years past the death of the creator. I think copyright pretty much should end at the death of the creator. And sometimes that might be random, where you have somebody young who just dies in a car accident, and then all of a sudden all of his content is public domain. But that kind of randomness is about the only way you could have any real fairness anyways, and that would have been a problem before anyways. Also, so yeah, when the first Atari bankruptcy happened, all of the Atari games should have been public domain. And in the de facto truth is, they kind of are. Like, nothing is really going to stop most people from torrenting a ROM from an Atari game. So really the law needs to fall in line with what reality is. And particularly, I think, in the United States and other places, but the United States I can speak to a lot better. There are so many laws that people are just constantly breaking anyways, that at a certain point, if 100% of your society or 60% or even 51% of your society is consistently smoking weed and it's illegal, well, then it shouldn't be illegal. And maybe we should just have a straight up constitutional amendment that says, hey, if most people are doing something, then society as a whole has voted very democratically that they don't really consider that a crime. And we can't have protectionist laws that protect the minority rich people. Unfortunately, that is kind of the vast majority of what the United States laws are, is that they protect the property of rich people at the severe disenfranchisement of small people. Alright, moving on though. Here we have a game called Big Cat from Hell, which looks like a bad Chinese visual novel. It's free. It's English, Japanese audio, English full audio, then German and French. So I guess it's a bad Japanese visual novel. Okay. Regardless, a lot of CG going on here, a lot of asset flips, I would suspect. Here we have a game called Guardians of Hyrule, which looks like nothing. $15.99 English full audio. Here we have a game called Treffen, which looks like it's a boxing simulator. Very poor animation though. $2.69. I'm wearing out my voice a lot. I needed to really take the weekend off and not do any recording. More and more, I'm finding I need to take more time off and not talk as much. But I can't ever really justify it in my head to do that. Yeah, Treppin is a no-go, obviously.
Perish before true magic.
Next, we have a game on Steam here called Never in Neverland, which looks like nothing. Free, English only. Looks like it's trying to be kid-friendly, but it looks pretty bad. We have Workplace Rhapsody, which is tagged sexual content and nudity, so let's check that out first before we show it on YouTube. Yep. It looks like it's a low-effort, maybe Chinese game. I don't even know what you really call it. RPG game, I guess, more than anything. Definitely doesn't feel like there's much here. $5.99 English, traditional Chinese, Japanese, Chinese. So
Is fighting and
yeah,
despair all
it
you
might
know?
be a Japanese
Okay,
game,
all systems online.
might be a Chinese game, might be an English game even, but I would lean towards assuming it's a low effort Chinese. Here we have a game called Alpha Deck, which looks like a card battling game of no visual quality. I couldn't imagine wanting to play a card game that looks this bad and the cards look this bad. As somebody who is more visually based, I still appreciate the visuals of the characters in Shadowverse, even if I mostly don't appreciate the rest of Shadowverse. Here we have a game on Steam called DAP, which is apparently a action horror game, action adventure horror game according to the tags. It looks weird. It may not really be a game or much of a game, but I think we had already even kind of looked at this. This is something that I would need to get a little bit more feedback through reviews on. So we'll put it on the fall list. $11.99 English full audio. And apparently they're celebrating games made in Victoria, Australia, which Melbourne International Games Week probably is a very short list of games made in Melbourne, Australia. Yeah. I'm actually a little surprised how many games are listed here. I would have expected it to be closer to like 5. And apparently there's a video archive of people doing speeches and like GDC equivalents on Steam. Which, you know what, that might make a little bit more sense to have a GDC run by Steam more than run by GameDeveloper.com or Informa, which is their parent company, because there is a heavy curation and yellow journalism happening even at GDC, in which you have to submit what you're going to be talking about, and if you don't talk the way they want you to talk, you're not going to be asked back at the very least. Although at a certain point, that is almost every conference, is that there is a level of censorship. There is no pure soapbox that you can just stand on and rant, other than just making your own presentations on something like YouTube. And even YouTube has a level of censorship to it, so yeah. That is, I guess, something to consider, as why most GDC presentations are done by the same type of people saying the same type of thing over and over again. And if anything, GDC may be pushing a narrative that is a slightly false narrative, but I think mostly true, in that all game developers are flaming SJWs who think the same way. I think that's mostly true, but I do know that there are some game developers who are secretly anti-SJW or just conservative or think a very different way, and they're just not speaking out about it for one reason or another. The problem, though, also with doing a Melbourne and Australia presentation is you can't get over the direct government censorship that happens in Australia as far as games, and how many stories we've heard of the of a game being refused classification in Australia. Australia is an incredibly conservative country politically. They don't allow any positive use of any kind of fictionalized drugs at all. They seem to not like violence that much, and not like anything in general. They kind of hate Japan, and so Japanese games tend not to get approved or not even try to be released. And in all fairness, I think everybody has a historical reason to kind of be mad at Japan, but they're still holding a grudge years later. So I really wouldn't think an event or highlighting games made in Australia is as good as highlighting games made in a more free country, which is kind of funny to say Australia is not a free country, but it kind of isn't, in the same way that none of them are. It feels like Australia is somewhere in the mushy middle between, say, the UK or the United States as far as what could be made and published, and something that could be made and published in, say, Turkey or Palestine or Sudan, United Arab Emirates. Probably leaning way closer to UK than those countries. Let's see.
Is that how you treat a lady?
Next, we have a game called The Juggler's Tale, which we saw this was announced and then really given no fanfare at all. You're playing as this marionette puppet, and you and everybody else has these strings that go all the way to the top of the screen, and it seems like, at least in some scenarios, the strings get caught up with things in the environment, but honestly, I think in most scenarios, looking at this trailer, you are not really getting caught up with things in the environment. Most of the time, it seems like you're not interacting with those at all. And that really makes it questionable whether there is much of an actual gameplay mechanic there, as having a character be a marionette. Honestly, if I was going to make a game where the character was a marionette doll, I think you'd fairly quickly want to just cut her strings and have her walking on her own ability. That being said, this is rated very positively. It's 1619, English full audio, German full audio. It makes every requirement, so it should go to the wish list. Here we have a game called Dun Dun VR. There's been a considerable lack of VR games today. This is the first VR game, and this came out actually September 29th. Are we seeing perhaps a limitation now on VR games being allowed on Steam? If that is the case, that would be very interesting. This VR game is free. It doesn't really look particularly that interesting. It's like a seated experience. Kind of feels like it's just on rails experience. Yeah. If this was the beginning of the end for VR on Steam, I really be too upset about it, or if this is a pause in VR so that they can readjust and focus more on the Steam Deck, that's much better of an idea. Certainly, if this is just the natural elimination of people trying to make VR games because they've realized they don't make any money, I'd be okay with that also. Here we have a game on Steam called Lost Hope, which, yeah, doesn't look like anything of interest. 99 cents English only. Here we have a game called Ellie Rampage, which I guess Ellie is an elephant. You could possibly do something with this, but I feel like the inevitable ending here is that the elephant is going to get shot and it's still going to be a bad end. So I don't know how you could have a rampaging elephant as your main character and make them sympathetic and somebody you want to see succeed and win against humanity. I mean, you would have to basically have an elephant that was going after poachers or something. There was a story I saw online of an elephant going on a rampage in like 1999 and killing a bunch of poachers in an act of what seems to be pure revenge. So you play this, and you hit this.
The crispier I make you.
But yeah, that would be a dangerous story, certainly, to tell. Playing as an elephant. You could make... You might as well just make it an alien or a monster or something. Something destroying humanity, and just embrace the twisted nature of that kind of gameplay. Not that I have a problem with twisted natures of gameplay by any means, it's just you've got to get your average player on board with that kind of thought. Here we have a game on Steam called Would You Like to Run an Idol Cafe 2, which is not tagged with any nudity or sexual content, but it definitely feels like that's what it would be. Otherwise, it's just kind of a generic visual novel. Let's see, it's $9.99 English and Chinese. Let's see if there says there's any mature content. This game contains scenes and visuals that users might consider not safe for work. That's really hedging your bets in the description. You should be able to say for certain what's in your own product. And then we have Agatha Christie, Hercule Poirot, The First Cases, which, yeah, this definitely feels like a younger Poirot. So we have like a younger Sherlock Holmes, and we have a younger Poirot now. And it does kind of feel like it might be slightly more of a game than the ABC Murders that I recently played. What was this bundled with? Yeah, the ABC Murders. So I could save 20% by doing this. When did this come out? 1996 or 2016? Sorry. So 5-year difference. Feels like they are moving in more of a direction of trying to make these games based on famous books much more interesting. This has enough positive reviews, so I can put that on the wish list. Alright.
End of the road, eh? Perhaps you're who I've been waiting for.
Should we evolve anything?
You were
Sure.
done for. I've got treat a lady rude.
Okay, so here we have a game called Killer on Steam, which looks like obviously just an asset flip game. We may have even talked about this. 79 cents English, allegedly full audio. And then G4 TV is apparently going away from the beach house at some point. But more recently, 4 hours ago, the best League of Legends content from a company called a content creating group called FaceCheck is coming to G4. Which really it feels like once again G4 is just really slow. Really slow to make decisions and announcements, and they were way too early to announce that G4 was coming back without really knowing what G4 was even going to be. And now that they've got somebody actually in charge that they've named, I feel like we're much closer towards whatever an actual G4
The truth will cut you down.
yeah, this is like a really long 3-minute video.
Do you want to hear about my coil tech?
So as far as I can tell, this long video, as I'm just skipping it and not listening to it, it seems like it's just Kevin Pereira and the completionist and some of the other characters that I really haven't even been paying attention to. It seems like they're just kind of saying they're giving away the idea of streaming from a beach house, which without really saying what the next step is. It again would make a lot of sense that they would have had planned their next step first before making an announcement or making a change. Regardless of how bad their beach house concept was going, it still makes total sense to just stick with it and stay the course until you have something better to offer. And I don't think G4 right now has something better to offer. Do we have enough? We need one more victory. Video Game Chronicles, we may have already talked about this. Capcom says it will make PC its main platform going forwards. Publisher wants PC to make up half its sales within the next few years. That is very smart, I think, for Capcom in particular, who has seen fairly large success when moving to PC. It is a direct smack across the face of PlayStation and Sony. And it is Capcom saying, we are abandoning really supporting and working for the PlayStation 5 because PlayStation 5 and Sony of California has not treated us as well or as we would like it, compared to the Sony of Japan that existed previously. Now, also, more importantly, I think there has just been massive success with Capcom games on PC. But Capcom also would have been the ones that just recently censored things for Resident Evil 4 re-release. So it's not like Capcom is saying that across the bow now we are going to release things on PC so we don't have to censor things and we can just release them the way we want to release them. It's fairly pretty much two very separate issues. Alright, we desperately need some victories. I'm hoping we can pull them off. Yeah. I think we will see games come out on PC and still be censored. Maybe there's just enough motion and shifting of how things are done that the censorship will disappear too. I think Capcom, like most Japanese publishers, are in for a bit of a surprise when they start seeing direct reviews on Steam and people specifically saying, hey, we don't like this game because it's censored, compared to what they had been hearing from either console people like Sony of California telling them what their audience wants, as if Sony of California knows what its audience wants, or from what they've been hearing from... Oh, I could have played that. That was dumb.
This world's whims.
Alright, well, that's not too terrible. Yeah. Let's see.
The greater your sin, the crispier I make.
Now I have to play in this solo mode because the second I stop it, it'll just stop moving. Video Game Chronicle says Sakurai says you should watch the Smash Bros. Final character reveal even if you don't play, which almost certainly tells me that it is Sakurai himself as far as the last character coming out. Like that's the only thing I could assume, is that it is either himself or somebody that Sakurai highly respects, like Miyamoto himself, like somebody who actually worked on the game, because I think pretty much in Smash Bros. Ultimate everybody else is already in the game. Maybe Master Chief isn't in the game, and I guess that would be an interesting twist, but not really. I can't really even think of anything else that would be really that interesting. GameDeveloper.com says accessibility tags on Xbox will help players understand which games are right for them. We had kind of talked about this, which they're trying to create a system here, like some of the permissions you see in Android phones, to just let people know, hey, here's what we think we can help you with as far as accessibility tags. Let's see. Do this. Do this. And then I'm just guess I'm gonna end the turn there. The guy in charge of YouTube Gaming says the work here at YouTube Gaming continues. We understand the importance of streaming community, and there's more work to do for our video demands, live and short creators. The progress for live streaming is encouraging, and we have a lot more to do. And then that links to a Civic article that seems to present Twitch as taking up 30%, 36% of video game live streaming platforms, where YouTube Gaming is taking up 22%. I think that is fairly inaccurate though, because just take half of that 30%, 18% off of Twitch, because how many people really are on Twitch at this point watching gaming content, video gaming content, instead of people watching pinball, poker, and hot tub streams, and or you're watching something that is much more better described as a podcast on Twitch versus actual video game stuff.
Change.
Well, I could definitely be wrong about that.
I am a prisoner.
I just can say, as a content creator, as a small content creator, I've never felt like there was any reason why it would make sense to put your content on Twitch, as that is only for live streaming. There's no interest whatsoever on, as far as I can tell, as far as video on demand content on Twitch, which means you have to constantly make new live streams to possibly even have a chance at success. And if you're not capable of willing to constantly make, potentially, it often feels like
You were done for.
20-hour or 12-hour a day live streams. If you're not capable or willing to do that, you are going to end up failing miserably. Let's see. The PlayStation 5 and Xbox supplier AMD expects the chip shortage to ease in the second half of 2022. Which, okay, good to know. Yeah, we have a game on Steam called The Song of the Fae, which is an old English way of talking about the fairies and fairy folk, magical creatures in general. This does not look interesting though. $8.99 English only. And then we have a 3D dungeon exploration game called Potato Flowers in Full Bloom, launching winter of 2022 for the Switch and PC, according to Gamatsu. We have an actual trailer for this. This looks very uninteresting, just looking at the screenshots. Yeah, there is no video, but I don't think I need it. Alright. So, we'll play this.
Smiles are the best medicine.
And do this. End the turn.
I am a prisoner of this world's ways.
And at 3 hours and 12 minutes and at my voice being worn out, I don't think I want to do any cleanup. Plus, there's just a whole bunch of this single player stuff that I'm really just going to have to grind and grind and grind playing this alone. I'm just gonna have to really try to grind on the easier characters and probably never even really beat the harder characters.
Is fighting in despair
That's
all
typically how these events go. To just get all the points. Spend an extra couple days. So I'm gonna scroll down my Twitter feeds and see if we have any new news to talk about. Susan would just be tweeting out some creators on the rise, which very inconsistent, or inconsistent is the word, yeah. Very, very inconsistent on whether she tweets out or publishes creators on the rise. Like, which, one way or the other, since the Creator on the Rise program and project is something that YouTube does, she should promote it, but she should also not promote things that aren't directly YouTube related promotions. Like, because there is definitely a lot of times where she's just promoting things that have nothing to do with YouTube. They're not even like they're hints at something that is going to become part of YouTube or come to YouTube. They're just like, hey, I'm rubbing elbows with these rich and famous people, thus I want to
One forest elixir.
highlight something. It's become way too easy to accidentally drag a tab out of the window lately. I kind of wish that would stop happening, because many times I've dragged a tab out of my window and opened a new window in Chrome, and then that's just wasted an extra few seconds.
No punches pulled, just swords.
Stop!
シーバするよ. Kids these days aren't up to snuff.
Yeah, and I'm just scrolling down to see if there's any new news. And from the looks of it, since we started late, that probably is the case that there won't be any new news. In fact, only 3 games even came out over the course of the past 3 hours. PlayStation 5 will reportedly be on sale at Smith's SMYTH Toys across the UK on Thursday, which I'm sure that doesn't help most people who aren't in the UK.
This is how you do fireworks.
Those leaves weren't just lying around.
A Assassin's Creed Valhalla title update arrives on Tuesday, introducing numerous fixes and graphics modes for Stadia, while paving the way to release the game's latest expansion. And yeah, that's about the only news at all. So this will be our last game.
My thunderbolts shall guide you, if they don't kill you first.
Just go ahead and play that. So we'll start looking at some of the games that are on the fall list, although frankly I opened these tabs so long ago I'm probably logged out at this point.
Let's play.
Here we have one that's early access, so came out in 2021 early access, so we don't have to consider it yet. And this is gonna take forever to load. Factory of Sweets as a pipe dream game, I think has no relevancy. So I think we have to say no to this. Even though I am still kind of looking for a decent pipe dream game. I'm not looking that hard for it. There's plenty of other games to play. Here we have a game called Factory Town, which terrain, conveyor belt system. There's more relevant games, I think, around this idea. So then it becomes a question about, do I want to play this kind of game at all? It is a little bit more simplistic looking, and it doesn't feel like it's just getting into alien technology. And you're using conveyor belts, trains, and chutes to move logs around, mostly. It's still early access in 2019. What are we doing with that as an idea? That's an interesting question. Because I could see a justification at this point of just saying anything 2019 that was in early access or very highly possible that it would not survive the... Oh, that was stupid.
Those leaves weren't just lying around.
I should have attacked the 1/1. I feel like it's a little too cynical to say just because it's 2019 that I should dismiss it being in early access because of the pandemic. I should dismiss it for being in early access just because it came out in 2019. I think I really don't want to show any quarter. If you were working on this game, if you were working from home, particularly games like this that could have been worked on from home because there's probably only one person working on it, you would have finished it by now. So I have to say no to Factory Town. Here we have what looks like a point-and-click adventure, although it's being tagged as an RPG. It's got just enough reviews to justify it. $9.99 English full audio. So put it on the wish list. Yep. The problem that we're going to run into, though, is also I just don't know how many more games I can justify buying. I'm not playing through games as fast as I would like, for certain. I'd like to be getting through 3 or 4 a month, and maybe I'm getting two done a month. Yeah, Fallen Angel here looks good. So it's not early access or anything. It's rated positively. That makes it to the wish list. Making it to the wish list just means that it is past the second tier of consideration of whether or not I would want to bother to play it or not. Like, it's something that I think I'd be willing to play if it's on the wish list, and if somebody gifted it to me, I'd be more than happy to cover it, and that's
I pray that you will
the
be free
bare
from
minimum.
suffering.
Now, when an actual sale comes out, when you actually have to put your money when your mouth is, that's when things get a little bit more questionable, and you have to start comparing big AAA games to lesser indie games as far as what the relevance is and which one do I really want to play. And that falls in line with something like this, Fallen Girl, Black Rose, and Fire of Desire, which I think may very well be more in the category of a Chinese visual novel that's trying to be kind of lewd but may not actually have any adult content in it. It's like 50% positive in the 30 days and 73% over its lifetime. It's has a free DLC which probably uncensors things. It's English and Chinese. 30 beautiful CGs with nudity. I think this is one of those games that's going to be 100% a sell on this character and this character alone. I just don't think there's enough there to make it to the wish list. I think a lot of these adult games, as much as they may draw my eye initially, when I actually start to think about them, it's like, I don't think there's a real criticism I can make when you have an actual goal of just being titillating. I can either say, well, for me personally, this is titillating, or it isn't, and that's probably the vast majority of what this criticism would be. Particularly when you get to like visual novels that in those cases the visual novel element, the story is potentially not that good. Next we have a game called Fallen Knight, which is mixed. Could give it a little bit more time, but there almost is just like no reason to. Yeah, I'll be generous and give it more time since it came out in 2021. whereas this one came out in 2020. I don't even know why this is on the fall list. No. This, I feel like I clicked on app accident. $4.99. Yeah, I don't see anything here that would have put that on the fall list on purpose. Here we have Familiar Travels, which looks like it's a furry adult game with nudity. I feel like I should probably have one of these on the wish list just in case. Just in case I ever needed a reason to play a furry game. I don't know though. You're definitely talking a fetish that is not something that particularly interests me when you're getting into furries, anthropomorphic animals. And this is a volume 1, and it's asking $10. The algorithm is comparing it to Bayonetta, and then the actual volume 2 is DLC for another $10. Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to say no to that. Sorry, furry fans out there. My fear is that somebody would actually gift me that game just to troll me, and then I'd end up feeling required to play it and not really interested in it. And so it would just be a general waste of everyone's time. And probably wouldn't give the best criticism for furry fans as a game anyways. Here we have a game called Fantasy General 2, which is rated very positively, $39.99. Not sure I want to play this kind of game though. Just like a real-time strategy game where you're controlling fantasy creatures in a turn-based placement style of gameplay. No, I say no to this. I don't think we're going to get all the F's done today. We have a game called Fantasy Versus. What's funny is, for a 2018 game, this actually looks pretty good, but by modern standards, it kind of just looks like a mobile game. $6.99, bunch of languages. So, I'm not sure if I really would want to play this. It also seems like it's kind of a almost MOBA, control the tower points. Is this online PvP? Yeah. I think it may be more focused around online PvP than it indicates. I think you have to say no here. Yeah. So most games on a weekly basis gets removed. This one I'm gonna give it a little bit more time. See, the problem here is it has 13 reviews, so it's not relevant. But it came out in 2021. So I'm giving 2021 games a little bit more chance, but kind of is no good reason for that. Whereas this one is mixed, so we can just go ahead and remove that as far as Far Away Puzzle Escape. And remember, this will not move forward unless I play. Here we have a game called Farmer's Fairy Tale, which is mixed, so we can remove that. Here we have Farmer's Life, which I think this one's probably too much of a troll game, too much of a joke game. This is still early access, so I'll give it a little bit more chance, but I think I'd probably say no to that anyways. Seems like it's too much of a joke.
This is how you do fireworks.
Here we have a game called Fast Break, which just looks like a basketball game of no interest. 6 stars, 99 cents. It's one of these older Ziggurat re-releases. I don't know why I had that on the fall list in the first place. Here we have Fate of Kai, which is tagged as a puzzle visual novel. Does feel very comic booky. It's rated very positively, so we can put that on the wish list. Some of these are easy decisions. Here we have what looks like an RPG, which I think we can probably reject this one. Fate of Windshift, early access from 2021. It looks too much like a mobile game. This must have been one of those games that caught my attention before I realized just how many mobile games were coming to Steam and did come to Steam.
A horizon gives me inspiration.
It looks like I'm up.
So yeah, get rid of that.
Play. Hey, let's play.
Here we have Fate's Call: A New Beginning, which came out in 2020. I think we can get rid of this VR game. It just has no reviews to it. Doesn't have enough relevancy. Doesn't look particularly that interesting. Here we have Fear of the Unknown, which looks like just a horror asset flip game. Again, one I probably was being too generous about. Early access from 2020, we can get rid of that. See, Fear of the Dark Unknown, on the other hand, is mostly positive and looks way better polished. So at the very least, if I am going to play a horror game, I should find the right ones, and that is a big, tall order. But notice how this game is focusing in on people and has real cutscenes. I guess the only question was, is it single player? And yes, it is. Like real monsters. Now, there may be a problem in games like this where they're going to give you like a 10% experience that is similar to like The Evil Within or Resident Evil, and that's it. When you would be more happy with a game that gave you closer to 20 or 30%, or much closer to 80 or 90% the amount of content you would expect from from The Evil Within or a Resident Evil game.
No punches pulled, just swords.
So,
No
yeah.
punches pulled, just swords.
That being said, I've never considered game length when looking at any of these games. It's kind of very difficult still to figure out what game length is. Like, if the Steam algorithm could do it, you could fairly easily say average playtime of reviewers and have that somewhere on the page, and they're just not doing that at all. Here we have a card game. Doesn't look terrible. Doesn't look that good. Has 4 user reviews. It's $11.99 as single player only. I'll give this a little bit more time, but it does definitely feel like this may be a card game that nobody's ever played or is ever going to play, and thus it's just completely irrelevant.
Your shining faith will carry you.
What? The real battle begins. Faith is an no. The smiles are not. Is that how you treat a
There we
lady?
go. Here we have Fight the Pudi Samurai, which looks like it's mostly a joke anime game.
What a dim light.
One forest elixir coming right
Apparently it's not out yet, and it's in early access. So I guess I'll leave this on this. I don't know what specifically made me decide that this possibly is a game that you'd want to cover. Other than, yes, it does look interesting as far as a first-person shooter with a bunch of anime girls around it. That obviously doesn't escape my attention, but I'm not sure there's a real game there.
No, the smiles are not free. Is that how you treat a lady?
Let's see. Next we have a game called Victorium. Is this a single player game? $9.99 single player. Action RPG with destructible environments. I'm leaning towards no here. It still doesn't really look like the game. Part of the problem I'm seeing here is just like no heads up display. So it'd be nice if the next Skyrim had major destructible environments, sure. But the actual game here looks lacking. So I'm going to say no to that. $9.99. Mostly positive, however. Here we have Fighting Clans, which is mixed. Which is a shame because we're always trying to find a good boxing game. And there seems to always be a lack of good boxing games. You only get one first impression in my book. I'm not going to keep something on early access and consider maybe it'll get better later. That's just not fair or realistic.
Our sacred forest. The smiles are not free.
Here we have Fights in Tight Spaces, which is rated very positive as a card game with interesting art style to it. It's still in early access for kind of no reason, so I'll leave that on the fall list. Here we have something called Final Assault, which looks like a military simulation dogfighting game. Is it in VR? Yes, it is. And it's rated very positively, so I'll leave that on VR on the fall list, since I really can't do anything else. Final Fantasy IV technically goes to the wish list. I have no real interest in covering any of that. And Tokyo Game Sale happening right now, so Nier Automata, Nier Replicant discounted. Dragon Quest 11 is discounted. Legend of Mania, Octopath Traveler, and then more very standard, very recognizable AAA Japanese titles. 50% off on some of the older Final Fantasy games, which is probably the best you're ever going to get as far as discounts on them. Not really seeing anything unique or new, though. Let's see. And if I could get... I'll get 300 points on this mission on Shadowverse for getting 15 wins, which obviously, if we can get a victory against Leon, I guess, he's the last one we haven't won, that would get me 200 points. And you have potentially 2,000 points you can earn with Luca and Leon. Or you can just grind it out and constantly just play against the easiest character. The only thing is they won't, they just won't concede, so they won't ever save you some time. Final Fantasy V is not out, so we leave that on the fall list. Final Fantasy VI is not out, I assume. So I'm not going to reload these pages. A lot of these pages opened a long time ago. Let's see, Final Winter. Do I think there's a game here? It's a dungeon crawler where you have basically no heroes at all. You're just sending regular humans to try and survive as a roguelike. That's an interesting idea, but it's not relevant at the moment, so I'll leave it on the fall list. I'm not willing to make an exception. And then Find All here as a hidden object game. Even though it's rated very positively, yeah, I guess I would throw this on the fall list, on the wish list, but in reality, I don't think I'd ever buy a hidden object game. And let's see, if we look at this publisher, they've only made the first one and a demo, so they aren't flooding Steam with hidden object games, so I often should applaud that also. Let's see. Here we have a game called Find the Cubs, which, yeah, I don't think there's enough of a game there, so I think that goes. Find the Soul Orb. Mostly positive. $5.99 English full audio. I want to dismiss this game, but it actually meets the requirements to make it to the wish list. And at the very least, it's a werewolf shooting game, and it's not like there's a ton of them, so I'm gonna put that on the wish list. Tough decision there, though. I could have gone the other direction. Here we have Fire Commander, which is to be announced, so might as well just get rid of it if it doesn't even have a release date. Being a Fire Commander, though, does sound like an interesting idea. Did I not show that game off? Oops, sorry. Here we have Fire Escape, which is mixed reviewed, so that can go. These are taking forever to load. They've been saved to memory since these tabs have not been used in a very long time, and they've just been open. Here we have a Fire Opal, which looks to be like a mix between Tetris and maybe Minesweeper. $5.99 English only and no reviews. Do we want to give it a little bit more time? Maybe. Here we have Fire Tonight, which is this out of early access? Yes. I remember this as an interesting looking game, and it's mostly positive, 85% positive of 34 reviews. And this is probably a great example why I shouldn't raise my standards and say I need 40 or 50 reviews, because there are a lot of games out there that barely get 30 reviews and still feel like enough people. Like in my actual life, if I could get even 5 people to directly suggest a game to me, I would totally listen to that. Even if 5 random strangers suggested something to me, I would totally be willing to consider it. In fact, in all honesty, even if 1 random stranger suggested a game to me, I would look at it and heavily consider it. Although it would heavily also come down to how much I thought that random stranger's opinion was worth paying attention to. Because, yeah, it is totally possible that the random stranger may have completely different tastes, or just generally no taste, in my opinion. Here we have a game called Firefighter. I think there are better versions of this game coming out in the future, so you have to say no to this. Also, this looks far too much like a mobile game. And let's see, we have a game called Fireflies, which Fireflies is no longer available for purchase, so we'll just take that off. Yeah, you don't run into that very often. Usually these games stay up on Steam forever. Here we have First Hero, Epic of Gilgamesh, which I bet there's not really a game here. I think we're gonna have to say no to this one too. Early Access 2021. I don't know if the Epic of Gilgamesh is actually a story worth telling. In a lot of ways, it's like the Odyssey. The Odyssey theoretically sounds like a story that should be told. Told a lot, but when you actually get down to the nitty-gritty of trying to tell the story, it's not often the best experience. This first-person tennis is rated positively, but it's VR, so we can leave it on the fall list. That looks pretty good, if I ever did get VR, which almost certainly never. First-person fishing, or fish-person shooter, is the name of it. This looked funny, and it probably would be worth doing a gag if you were just going to cover a lot of first-person shooters. But you do run into the point of you would have to just make a special reason, a special exception to play this game, because it's not really relevant. It's still in early access. I'll leave it on the fall list to see if it ever comes out of early access, but it does kind of feel like it's a joke that they just shoved out on Steam and then never thought of again, never updated. Let's just leave it at that. Here we have a game called Fit Force, which, yeah, looks like it's a collection of mini games, and you use your smartphone. You put the smartphone in your pocket, and then it checks the movement. And it's free to play with no DLC. Interesting. Well, then why don't I just have it in my library? Yeah, you just click the play button now. Yeah, that should add it to your library. And frankly, I would just never actually play it. What's funny is I click to play. Steam is installed. Click the cancel button there. Yeah, you have to actually click Steam is installed as the next thing. So yeah, just add that to the wish list now. There. Free game, exercise game, something I'll never actually show off. I would have no good way to show it off at all.
The time for perennial prayer has come.
Let's see. Plus, yeah, I'm not gonna really exercise. Let's just be honest there.
Let's play.
Here we have a game called Five Nations, which is tagged as a real-time strategy.
Let's play.
Kind of like a StarCraft clone in space, maybe. I'd actually like to see how this plays. Yeah, I talked about how they are in production of a Babylon 5 reboot. There were like 5 main species that were in kind of a major war before Babylon 5 was established. I think it was 5. There may have been more. There definitely were more species, but I don't know how many were on the council to start with. Yeah, this definitely does have the feel of a StarCraft game. And if I was looking to play something StarCraft and not support Activision Blizzard, which I guess I am, this makes sense. So put that on the wish list. Of course, I already own Red Alert, and it's much more relevant to play Red Alert than it is to play a kind of no-name clone.
I'm gonna rest for a bit. I won't lose again.
I got fairly lucky there.
May the forest be
Here we have a game called Flan, which has 7 user reviews. Let's see.
play.
I feel like this is one of those
I'm gonna rest for a bit.
games that looks interesting but actually plays pretty bad. You're like controlling 2 people and trying to solve puzzles. And it seems like the girl character here brings light and thaws ice, where the shadow character has a massive but slow slash attack. I don't think there's enough game here though. $9.99. Let's see if the reviews. One positive. Let's browse all the reviews. Yep. There's like 1 negative review, it seems like. Of course, a lot of people seem to get the game for free also. It's just irrelevant. Yeah, I would have to say. It's funny, they're saying it's 68% positive, so it's not even that positive. Regardless, $9.99 is too expensive. There's no relevancy there.
Smiles are the best medicine.
Can we win?
The real battle
We
begins.
might be able to win here. If we can play this. And then play this. There we we go.
I pray that you will be freed from suffering.
Here's a weird game. Flesh-eating geriatric internet predator in 2021. Yeah, I don't know if this is a trauma-style weird full-motion video game. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of relevancy here. I think I want to give this a little bit more consideration, though. Because we don't see a lot of that. Really, you don't have, hey, here's a art film group of people who are a bunch of weirdos, and they've made something very weird, like the Toxic Avenger. Yeah, we are not making good progress, though. I'm gonna have to play a considerable amount off screen to get bonus points. Meanwhile, there's maybe no daily quests today left to do, but we are just missing out on these golden chests. And yeah, so there's just a ridiculous amount of stuff to do. And while that won't have been all of the games starting with the letter F, it definitely took out a significant chunk of games that are on the fall list starting with the letter F. And so we can continue next time we have some extra free time to do with fall list cleanups. And yeah, that's going to be it for this stream. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want to friend or follow me on any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.